Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was known as a fairy guardian. In the past, he's a man known by many names, the Demon Brat, the hero of the Fourth Great Shinobi War, the Nanaidaime Hokage of the Leaf. Now, he is known as Fairy Tail's very own guardian angel, an urban legend of the world of magic, who goes by the name of Fairy Guardian. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 13. Poo-ha! I sure ate, Natsu said in satisfaction as he held his slightly swollen belly, making his way back to Honeybone with Naruto, Wendy, Lucy and the two blue and white exceeds walking before him. It was the night after the second day of the Grand Magic Game, and Fairy Tail had had a huge party at a local bar to celebrate their huge win that morning. Lucy had lost, but it was nothing to be ashamed about because Raven Tail had cheated their way to victory. Naruto, Kana and Mira's huge wins were still something worth celebrating. You ate too much, Carla said sternly, pointing her paw at Natsu before turning to Happy and giving him the same stern look. You too, Happy. I'm full too. Happy meowed happily, having gotten for himself 2 of his favorite tuna fishes in total. He might be a small cat, but he could eat a lot. Is the lodging around here? Wendy asked, turning to Lucy who was talking with Naruto about her upcoming novel. Yes, we're almost there. The celestial mage nodded her head with a smile. Is everyone in the same room? Wendy asked nervously, with her cheeks reddened a little. This is really the worst. Lucy made a forced smile before sighing longingly. Natsu snores so loudly, Gray ends up naked before you know it. Urza always crawls into my bed. The only one that doesn't cause any problem is Naruto. He usually stays outside all night and only returns in the early morning to wake us up and get ready for the tournament. You don't sleep, Naruto-san? Wendy asked, turning to Naruto. Lucy also looked at him, wanting to hear his answer as she had always wondered about that. I only need 2 hours sleep per week. Both girls widened their eyes in shock. So yeah, I don't sleep much. But how can you stay awake and don't feel sleepy? Lucy asked. I'm used to it. Naruto answered shortly, smiling at them. Sleep wastes my time, which I can use to do something better like training, meeting people, and doing whatever I want without anyone bothering me. Because there is no one around, it's the time of day you can concentrate on yourself. That was so Naruto they didn't feel surprised at all, but anyway, I don't think you two should follow my example. Young girls like you need to have enough sleep to stay healthy, as lack of sleep can be a pain to those who aren't used to it. Lucy and Wendy nodded their heads. They could not agree more. Damn, you sure are a monster man. Natsu, who had also been listening to his speech, said admiringly before throwing both of his hands into the air and crying out loud, Yash, I am not going to sleep tonight too, so I can use those time to train. I don't think that's not a good idea, Lucy said while forcing a nervous smile to her face. She then looked around, noticing the absences of Titania Urza Scarlet and the infamous stripper of Fairy Tail, Gray Full Buster. Have anyone seen Gray and Urza? She asked curiously. Poor Gray. Carla giggled softly while shrugging her shoulders. It seems like Gray got snatched away by Lion. What about Urza-san? Wendy asked curiously. I haven't seen her, now that you mention it. Lucy shook her head before turning to Naruto. Naruto, do you know where she is? She went to Mermaid Heel's lodging to meet that cat girl who I suppose is another childhood friend of hers. I saw the two of them walking together not too long ago. Naruto informed them before asking. She will probably return before midnight, though, because she has to give me the answers for the test I gave her this morning. They nodded. She had to figure out how Hiraishin worked and give Naruto the answer before midnight. She still hadn't had the answer, but from what they had heard from Levi, who had given her the record of the game's second day, Urza believed it had something to do with his Triple Blades kunai. Hey, guys? Natsu suddenly when they were just a block away from Honeybone, pointing his hand to the front. There's someone in front of our lodging. Their eyes turned to the person who was standing in front of Honeybone. With enhanced eyesight, it was quite easy for Naruto and the Dragonslayers to see who it was, but Lucy and the cats were having a lot of difficulties. There really is. That person is. You guys have such a good eyes. Lucy said as she put her hand on her forehead. Huh? It took her a few more steps closer to see who it was, and to say she was surprised was an understatement. It was Yukino Aguirre, the celestial mage of Sabertooth. Line break. Business? Lucy asked in confusion, staring at the girl who was sitting on the sofa in front of her. With me? Naruto was sitting on the chair at the table behind Lucy, as he had decided to hear what Yukino had to say. With how everything was going, 2 celestial mages who had all 12 zodiac golden keys in their possession was extremely troublesome, and not to mention that dangerous. Yes. Yukino nodded her head. I have important business with you, Lucy-sama. What is Saber trying to pull this time? Natsu asked with a growl, making Yukino look at him nervously. Naruto then raised his hand and knocked his fist on the top of his head, causing him to cry out in pain. Hey, you want to pick a fight? He yelled, but Naruto ignored the Dragon Slayer as he looked at Yukino. Sorry, he doesn't know how to properly talk to a lady, Naruto said calmly. When it was his turn to be nervously looked at by Yukino, he continued, I, personally, don't have any problem with you or any of your teammates. Aside for some arrogant speeches and holy the now attitude, Sabertooth hasn't done anything wrong to me, so I think we're all cool here. Wendy and Lucy nodded their head in agreement, giving Yukino a comforting smile. Thank you, Naruto-sama. Yukino nodded her head gratefully at him. No need for the honorific suffix. Naruto shook his head. Yukino only looked at him for a few seconds before she turned her attention back to Lucy. Anyway, Lucy-sama, this might be a rather bold request, but... Yukino said as she reached her hands down and took out something from her pockets. Putting it on the table, the light silver-haired mage took her hand back and revealed them to be her golden keys. Much to Lucy and everyone's surprise, the key of the paired fish Pisces and the key of the heavenly scale Libra, she continued. I'd like you to take the 2 of these, Lucy-sama. Everyone, especially Lucy, was shocked by her request. Naruto, meanwhile, was looking at Yukino strangely. He saw her there with Lucy, didn't he? Did history change? It shouldn't be possible because as far as he could remember, he hadn't done anything to prevent the gate from being opened, yet. That's impossible. Lucy replied, looking at Yukino. I can't take them. When I saw you today, Lucy-sama, I decided that after the games had ended, I would give you these keys, Yukino said, closing her eyes. The games haven't even ended yet. Naruto reminded her, or is it something else we don't know? Yes. Unfortunately, my games have ended, Naruto-sama, Yukino replied, causing the younger fairy to look at her in surprise. I was just a reserve member of Team Sabertooth. Minerva-sama will probably take my place. With this, the strongest 5 that changed Sabertooth have been gathered. So then. Happy said, remembering what Max said about the strongest 5, the ones who Sabertooth's master had gathered a few years ago. Those 5 were very strange, but very capable mages. They were Rufus, Orga, the twin dragon slayers, Sting and Rogue, and lastly the daughter of Sabertooth Guild's master, Minerva Orlando. You weren't part of them? Yes, Minerva-sama was in the middle of a job, so I was allowed to take her place, Yukino explained, gripping her hands tightly. But why? Wendy asked, looking confused. These stellar spirits are precious to you, aren't they? Precisely for that reason. Yukino replied. These celestial spirits will be happier, as well as me, if they're entrusted to Lucy-sama, who is a far more outstanding spirit mage than me. Her eyes saddened for a moment. That's quite a happy request. Lucy made a nervous smile, fluttering. But for me? You have already gathered 10 of the 12 golden keys of the zodiac, Yukino said. With these 2 keys added. Yukino looked at Lucy, her face more serious than ever. The 12 keys have been gathered, she said in a serious tone. The gateway that changes the world will open. You know about that legend? Naruto asked. It wasn't exactly a legend, but he had decided to go with the flow anyway. Yes, it's mentioned in a lot of books of history, of magic. Yukino nodded her head. The gateway that changes the world? Lucy asked in awe, what does that mean? Like I said, it's just an old legend. Yukino paused for a second before continuing. I don't understand the meaning of it, either. You might have noticed this already, but the number of stellar spirit mages has decreased over the past years. Even the one mage from our guild lost his magic, and there was that Zentopia incident some time ago, as well. We might be the only 2 celestial spirit mages left now. She then smiled at Lucy. You are the one that loves and is loved by spirits. You should carry the 12 golden zodiac keys and walk together with these spirits. Yukino finished, smiling at Lucy. Sorry, Lucy shook her head, surprising Yukino. But I can't accept them. Lucy gave the shocked Yukino a gentle smile. Celestial spirit magic is a magic of bonds and trust. She explained. There's no way that owners can be switched so easily. This wasn't an easy solution. Come by, Yukino said, sighing longingly. Eh? Lucy asked, looking at Yukino, who stood up and bowed her head low to them. I figured you would say that, Yukino said as she stood straight up, smiling at Lucy. When the time comes, the 12 keys will naturally be reunited again. The blonde could only smile at her. Even though she was a celestial mage, she was as confused about Yukino's words as everyone. It'd be nice if we could meet again, Yukino said as she bid them farewell and left the room. Naruto only stood there and looked at the empty space in front of him for a moment, thinking about what he should and should not do. Naruto knew he had to make his move carefully. He noticed the luggage outside of Honeybone when the group entered their room with Yukino. It probably belonged to the girl. He guessed she was leaving the city, but it would be very troublesome if she really was, because first, he saw her there with Lucy, and second, if she was really leaving and causing the future to change, it would be impossible for Lucy to summon all 12 zodiac spirits. There was a chance that she would risk her life in trying to do so. Naruto, where are you going? Lucy asked when she saw Naruto making his way outside. You guys wait here, I will return in a moment, Naruto said as he put on his shoes and grabbed his jacket. Opening the door, he turned around and spoke to Lucy. Line break. As she walked away from Honeybone, pulling her luggage behind her, she couldn't stop herself from wondering where she should go and what should she do next. Hey, Yukino. Then suddenly, Yukino heard the voice of someone she didn't expect. Hold on a second there. Yukino turned around and saw Naruto walking towards her with a small smile on his face, his hands in his pocket. Naruto-sama? She said, shocked to see him there. What are you doing out here? Just want to make sure that you're alright and get home safe. You didn't look very happy when you were talking to us. Even though, I can see that your mood is down. Naruto said. You went to all that trouble of chasing after me just for that? She asked in shock, her voice trembling. I noticed the luggage when you came here. Naruto said, looking at the blue luggage Yukino was pulling with her. Where were you going at this timing anyway? It's nearly midnight, isn't it? Even if you're no longer part of Team Sabertooth, why don't you stay to watch and cheer for your team? He asked, looking around. It's just... She stuttered, trembling. Hey, are you all right there? Naruto asked, noticing the tears that were appearing at the corners of her eyes. Why are you crying? He asked, his voice became soft and comforting. I'm sorry. Yukino said, as hotly tears freely running down her cheeks. I just can't take it anymore. She cried and fell down to her knees, crying into her hands. The only people who ever treated me like this was my sister. Naruto looked at her in surprise, listening to the girl as she poured her heart out to him. I always looked up to Sabertooth. Last year, I finally got in, but I'm not allowed to go back anymore. What happened, Yukino? Naruto asked, lowering himself down to one knee before placing a hand on her shoulder. Just from that one loss. Yukino said through sobbing gasps. I was kicked out of the guild. I was forced to be naked in front of a lot of people, forced to erase my guild stamp with my own hands. Naruto's expression hardened. He didn't care if they kicked her out of their guild because it's just not his business. However, was that necessary to humiliate a maiden in such a way right in front of her guildmates like that? He had to wonder. He had understood why Natsu had so many problems with Sabertooth and its members. It was so bitter and humiliating. Yukino continued, and Naruto could only squeeze her shoulder comfortingly. My self-respect and memories of the guild were completely destroyed. Yukino said as she tried to wipe the tears away from her eyes. Everything will be alright, Yukino. How many years had it been since the last time he said those words comfortingly to anyone? He didn't remember. It's not Naruto-sama. I don't have a place to return to. I don't even know what to do now. She said, hiccuping slightly as she looked at him. When I heard you told Urza-sama to have more confidence in herself, I thought I could do it too. Even though your words weren't mean for me, they gave me courage, the strength, and everything that I lacked to face Kaguya-sama in the battle. I thought I could accomplish something if I try my best too. It makes me feel like I am worth something. I'm so ashamed of myself to feel such way. Naruto didn't know what to say. Those words. This girl. She was just like a woman he used to know, loved, and cared about. Yes. Yukino said, trying to wipe the tears from his eyes. I'm sorry, But she widened her eyes in shock when Naruto suddenly moved the hand on her shoulder behind her head and gently pulled her toward his chest, giving her a comforting hug. Naruto-sama, she said, looking up at him in surprise. It's alright, Yukino, it's alright for you to feel that way. You don't have to feel ashamed for your feelings. They're only natural human emotions, after all. Naruto said with a soft tone. Before it hardened, Sabertooth should be the one who felt ashamed about what they did. Line break. I'm back. Urza announced as she entered their shared room, carrying a paper bag in her hand. Hello Wendy, it's good to finally have you here with us. She gave a warm smile to the blue-haired Sky Dragon Slayer, who she saw sitting on Lucy's bed and talking with her exceed friend Carla. Thank you, Urza-san, Wendy replied brightly. Lucy, Natsu, have Gray returned yet? They both shook their head, making Urza nod her head in understanding before asking while looking around, what about Naruto? He left after Yukino earlier. She answered, and then continued when she noticed the confused look on Urza's face. It's a long story. Is that so? Urza nodded her head and walked toward her bed. Hey, Urza, what is that you are carrying? Natsu asked as he took a peek into the bag in Urza's hands before dodging her fist when she tried to punch him away. Instant ramen? Really? Can I have some? They are for Naruto, Natsu, Urza said as she pointed her hand at his face. He likes instant ramen? Let's just say that he likes all ramen, good or bad, but he usually prefers good, so I bought the best in the store. Urza said, but she nodded her head anyway. I bought these so I could bribe him into forgiving me for failing his test. Usually, failures come with punishments, so the last thing I want right now is being punished by him. Urza said with a horror expression, causing the girls, especially Wendy, to look at her nervously while sweat dropping. What did he do to you? Lucy asked, shocked. Anyway, you still don't know how oration work? I do, but I'm not 100% sure. These instant ramen cups are just a backup plan in case I give him the wrong answer. She said, I couldn't cook ramen, at least, not the delicious kind, so I decided to buy these. Well, good luck to you then. Lucy chuckled. Speaking of, why aren't you calling him sensei? Don't tell him this, but I don't like to call him sensei when he's not around. Urza said while scratching the back of her head. You know, it feels weird somehow calling someone who is just a few years older than you teacher. I mean. Urza Scarlet. I know you are in there. Open this door this instant. However, before Urza could finish her explanation, they heard a female voice shouted out for Urza, followed by the sound of someone hit their fist against the door several times with much more force than necessary. Whoever it was, she was rather impatient, strong, and she wasn't in a good mood. Widening her eyes when she recognized the owner of the voice, Urza immediately turned around and walked toward the door so she could open it. Sure enough, she saw Naruto's self-proclaimed servant standing at the other side of the door. She was wearing her cloak, but she didn't put the hood on so her face was visible. "Sila, what are you? Where is Master?" She snapped furiously. "Where is he? Calm down, what are you talking? I couldn't find him anywhere. He suddenly disappeared." "You know where he is, don't you?" she asked again in the same tone. Her eyes were sharp and almost emotionless. "How do I know?" Urza asked, crossing her arms over her chest, feeling a little annoyed at Sila's attitude. "Aren't you supposed to be the one who follows behind him wherever he goes to like a loyal puppy dog?" "What did you say?" Sila growled as she raised a hand. Unfortunately, no fight broke out because Lucy had finally decided to ask. "Urza, who is this?" "This is Sila. She is Naruto's servant," Urza introduced, turning her head around to her friends, who all gasped in shock, or at least, she likes to think so. "Those horns. Is she?" Wendy asked nervously, looking at Sila's gold horns. "Yes, Wendy. She's a devil, not a friendly type." Urza nodded her head. "I believe you say enough, Urza Scarlet." Sila interrupted. "Now, tell me, where is my master before I—" "Lucy-sama." It was Sila's turn to be interrupted when Yukino came running in a hurry. The look on her face was the combination of worry and nervousness, as well as many others. "Please, you have to help me." "What's wrong, Yukino?" Lucy asked as she stood up. "It's Naruto-sama." Line break. Sabertooth was one of the luckier guilds around the Grand Magic Games, since the whole guild got to use Crocus Gardens as a place to stay for the duration of the games. It was nearly midnight, and everyone was sleeping soundly, completely unaffected that one of their fellow guildmates just got disbanded from the guild. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, something exploded. "What the?" Sting exclaimed in shock, shooting up from his bed and looking around. His sleepiness instantly disappeared when he heard a lot of crashing, following by an explosion and screaming under him. "What's happening?" Lecter, his cat, asked as they heard another scream. Grabbing his vest, the Light Dragon Slayer ran towards the door and saw his partner Rogue and Fro flying next to him. "Guys!" Sting exclaimed, running towards them. "What's going on?" "There's an intruder attacking us," Rogue explained with a bead of sweat on his temple. "An intruder?" Sting said in shock as they ran towards the hallway. "Who is it?" "Beat me," Sting replied while gritting his teeth, "but he probably has a death wish." While running through the hallway, the doors to the lobby exploded and one of their guildmates flew through it. "Hey!" Sting asked the guy who was lying on the ground. "You okay? Who did this?" "He's too strong," the guy mumbled before passing out. Sting looked through the door and his expression changed from confused to shock. "Get the hell out of my way, trash!" He would never expect to see Naruto Uzumaki standing right there, mercilessly beating the men that were trying to stop him like they were nothing. Worse, he looked like he wasn't even trying to do that at all. When the hallway was clear, Naruto walked toward the hall with slow footsteps, cracking his fingers dangerously. Sabertooth mages gathered in the hall, staring nervously at Naruto as he made his way inside. They all knew just how powerful this man was, and clearly, the path of destruction he carved just now wasn't something that should be taken lightly. "Do you have business with me, brat?" A tall, elderly man, distinguished by his massive, extremely muscular physique, untarnished despite his advanced age, roughly pushed his mages out of the way and stood in front of Naruto, glaring down at Naruto. This was Chiema, the master of Sabertooth. "You're the master?" Naruto asked while everyone stared at him in shock, thinking he'd gone mad. "Good, save me the time to look for you." His eyes then darkened as he returned the glare the massive man was giving him. "I came to kick your ass, old man." The others gaped in shock at his declaration. Gyema was unimpressed. Kicked out just because of one loss? Naruto asked, raising his eyebrows. Sound familiar to you? Some of the Sabertooth's mages, like Sting and Rogue, immediately knew that he was talking about Yukino. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're acting out of your own sense of justice, huh? Justice? Oh, hell no, there is no such thing like that. Naruto spoke. Now, I might be a cold heart bastard, but even the hot tears of a young woman can melt the coldest heart. Naruto then pointed his finger at Gyema. You kicked Yukino, a pure maiden, out of your guild, shattered her dream, and worse of all, you humiliated her in front of everyone in a way that was completely unacceptable and destroyed the good memories about Sabertooth in her heart, in one single night. People like you don't deserve to be a master. You don't even deserve to stand there breathing and facing me like this. To make the skies roar, to make the earth boil, to make the seas silent, that is Sabertooth, Gyema said emotionlessly. You kicked her out just for one loss? Naruto asked. Why didn't you kick Rufus out then? Didn't he lose to my student, Urza? Rufus will have another chance to prove himself on the battlefield when he fights Fairy Tail. The guildmaster answered, I simply have no sympathy for weaklings like her. You sound like a tyrant more than a guildmaster. How can trash like you become a guild master is beyond me, unless everyone here who stands in front of me is nothing but disgusting low trash as well. Naruto said as he stretched his arms out and looked around at the angry wizards who glared at him when he called the trashes. Hold on a second, I take that back. You guys are even worse than trashes. He cried. The sadistic smile on his face caused the weaker magic users to take a step back in nervousness. Now, enough fooling around and let's get back to the business. I came here to beat the shit out of each and every single one of you. He said, pointing his hand to each of them, and I make a promise that I won't leave this place until you're all good enough to dump into a waste bin, which I'm going to do myself. Ha ha ha. Gyema laughed loudly. That's some big words for a fly like you. Surely you can't think that a mere fairy can defeat a tiger. We will see about that. Naruto's expression darkened. So, what are you going to do? Will you willingly let me collect your bodies, or are you going to put on a fight? It's still too early for you to go to challenge someone like me. Naruto made a mocking expression when Gyema said that Dobengdal be a reasonable opponent for him. A man wearing shinobi gear came up and kneeled beside him. Yes, master. A ninja? Good, come here. Naruto taunted, holding a hand behind his back as he made a come-over gesture with the other. It's 100 years too early for the likes of a common guild soldier like you to challenge me. Gyema said, if you want to fight with those on top, show me that you're qualified to do so. Dobengdal then charged at Naruto, his hands held back and they were engulfed in rainbow aura, but before he could even do anything, Naruto moved to the side and thrust his elbow his right shoulder, breaking it in several bones inside his body in the process before swiping his hand around, creating a water dragon from the air and sending it crashing into the Sabertooth mage. The mage crashed through several walls of Crocus Garden before he was sent out of the building, his body covered in deep cuts. No one dared to say a word after seeing one of the top 10 members of their guild defeated just like that. Who's next? Naruto asked coldly as the water dragon circled around him, glaring at the wizards before falling down to the floor and returning back to normal water. Master, let me. Sting stepped forward, but his master held his arm out, stopping him. I see, amusing. Gyema pushed the right side of his kimono down and said loudly, come at me with all you. However, before he could even finish his statement, Naruto had already stood right in front of him, appearing in a flash. Way faster than he could react, Naruto's fist glowed and he threw his punch, aiming for the man's jaw. The force of Naruto's punch caused a powerful shock wave that blew away everything in the area. Some members of Sabertooth, who couldn't handle it, were knocked down to the floor and had to roll on the ground to make sure they weren't blown out of the building. The entire Crocus Garden Lodge shook like it was hit by an earthquake, and the part of the place in front of him couldn't handle the shockwave and collapsed into pieces. When the dust had been cleared, Naruto wasn't surprised to see Gyema still standing in front of him, unharmed. Standing between him and the man was a girl with black hair and sharp dark-colored eyes, her arms outstretched and hands covered in the multicolored aura. Well, aren't you such a pretty little thing? Naruto said with an emotionless tone. She had moved the force of his punch away at the last second with her magic. It was more or less a considerable achievement. However, stay out of my way. Suddenly, Minerva Orlando heard a voice at her right and didn't even get the chance to turn her head to that direction when another Naruto appeared and threw several shurikens at her. Blinking in surprise when the Naruto in front of her disappeared in a cloud of smoke, Minerva was then pulled away by an invisible force, her arms being clasped tightly to the side of her body. It dragged her across the building and slammed her into the wall, knocking the wind out of her lungs. As she struggled, she finally realized there was no unseen force. It was the weapons that Naruto had thrown at her had thin wires attracted to them. The shuriken curved in the air, wrapped the wires around her body, binding her completely, and pulling her with them to the wall. As Minerva tried to free herself from the wires, Naruto flicked a paper to the nearest wall. Much to everyone's shock, the moment it came to contact with the solid surface, it exploded like a bomb. "Stay where you are and don't try your luck," Naruto said. Minerva looked around and widened her eyes in shock when she saw him flicking the same papers at her, attracting to her body as well as the wall around her body. There were a lot of them, at least 24. Those papers are more than enough to level this floor. The slightest impact can make them explode. Because your hands are bound, you won't be able to cast territory in time. There is no chance for you to make it out alive. Considering yourself very lucky, because I know you weren't there when your father humiliated Yukino right in front of her guildmates. You? Minerva gritted her teeth, but she didn't dare to move. The mistress, defeated just like that? Rufus asked while sweating nervously. What is he? A member asked, shocked. Don't make me rethink my decision. Naruto said before he turned back to Gyema, who were looking at him with his expression unchanged. Now, where are we? So be it, brat. I shall show you true power. The guild master of Sabertooth said as a purple aura flared powerfully around him, blasting several wizards that were standing near him back several meters and causing the others to look at him nervously, shocked by their master's display of power. However, the same could not be said to Naruto. Disappear, brat. He declared as he held up his arm, palm facing Naruto. Hear the roar of the tiger. The area around Naruto shone brightly and then exploded. However, I'd rather not, Naruto stated coldly as he appeared in front of Gyema and thrust his elbow into his face, sending him flying away with a shocked expression on his face. Naruto had to admit, he felt a little satisfied when he saw teeth flying out of the man's mouth. They were followed by saliva, and of course, a lot of blood as Naruto's attack knocked his jaw out of its place. The strongest guild? More like the most raffish guild I have ever seen in my life. Master! Sting shouted as the master tried to pick himself up and charged at Naruto, but not without turning his head back to his teammates. What are you waiting for? He is looking down on us. Are you all seriously going to overlook this? Rouge was the first one to act, following behind his partner as they both entered their Dragon Force mode, flaring their magical power around their bodies. Oi, are we seriously going to do this? Orga asked. As the other members of Sabertooth thought about their next moves, Sting jumped at Naruto and threw a punch at his face, only for the blonde to catch it in his hand before sending an even stronger right hook at the White Dragon Slayer's cheek, knocking him back. Rogue turned into a shadow and tried to assist his partner, but before he could get behind Naruto, the immortal shinobi's shadow extended and shot up from the ground, wrapping itself around Rogue's body like a rope before throwing him across the building. As he tried to get up, the shadow then turned into a hand and wrapped its finger around the black-haired Dragon Slayer's neck, choking him with its strength. Gritting his teeth, Sting forced his head back and gathered his magical energy into his mouth to release a tornado of holy light at Naruto, aiming at his face. Faster than light, Naruto moved his head out of the way and brought his right leg up, smashing his foot into Sting's face. The force of his kick broke the dragon scales on his cheeks before sending the White Dragon Slayer away like a rocket, flying through the walls of Crocus Garden before crashing through several houses in front of the place, disappearing under a pile of bricks when the last house crashed and fell on top of him. I guess we have no choice. Rufus said as he put his fingers on his temples, casting his magic Moyoru Daichi no Go, Memory Make, Karma of the Burning Land. he declared and touched the ground with his hand, setting it on fire. Large and fierce blazes, which grew larger and larger as they got farther away from him, were directed at Naruto from below. 120 mm Kakuraihu. Orga declared as he put his partially open palms horizontally from his body, causing tiny sparks of black lightning to generate between his hands before growing larger and larger in semicircles until an electric projectile was fired from their center toward Naruto, who didn't show a hint of nervousness even though two powerful techniques were making their ways toward him. As the black lightning projectile got closer, Naruto raised his hand and gathered high concentrated lighting to his hand, producing a sound of many birds chirping before slashing his hand vertically when Orga's attack was right in front of him, completely neutralizing it. When the magic disappeared, Naruto raised his right foot and then stomped it down to the ground, turning the area around him into molten lava, which completely overwhelmed Rufus Karma of Burning Land before spreading in every direction, blowing away every mage that couldn't get away and setting their clothes and even limbs on fire. Not even Rufus and Orga, who was too shocked to even muster a word, were spared from its power. The next moment, the entire building collapsed around him, but Naruto easily avoided the falling objects and landed gracefully on his feet. Naruto! Then suddenly, the door, or at least what was left of it, was kicked open and a group of people came running in. The former mage of Sabertooth Yukino was the first to enter. Following behind her were Sila, Urza, and the rest of Fairy Tail Team A, who were shocked to their cores when they saw the scene, which had Naruto in the middle. Holy shit! Everyone stands back. Natsu exclaimed as he felt the heat of the lava on the ground. It was no normal heat, he could tell. Master! Sila muttered in surprise as she looked at him. Naruto-sama, this is... Yukino gasped while covering her mouth with her hands. Took you guys long enough, Naruto muttered as he cancelled his technique, causing the lava to disappear. This is... Urza then looked at him. Naruto. You have gone too far. It's sensei to you, Urza. Naruto said, pointing his finger at her, and also, this is nothing. I'm actually holding back a lot, you know? This is holding back? Gray asked in shock. Man, you have destroyed the entire block, look at the destruction outside. While I like what you're doing right here, Naruto, can you save it for tomorrow when it's legal? Natsu asked before noticing the glares he was receiving from his more responsible teammates. I mean, this can start a guild war and it's forbidden and... Naruto-sama, watch out. Before he could finish his sentence, Gyema busted out from the ground and jumped at Naruto. Die, you trash. He then grabbed the blonde by his head and used his magic to fire a powerful blast at Naruto. It was so large it swallowed the blonde completely and blew away everything on its path, destroying several houses as well as structures within 50 meters ahead. Master! Sila cried and glared hatefully at Gyema. You trash? Look at yourself, how you are anywhere outside of a trash bin is beyond me. But before she could make a move, Naruto's voice was heard from inside. Then smoke, which was clear a second later, revealing a Naruto who didn't even have a single scratch on his body. His clothes were slightly damaged, though you know. Naruto shot his hand out and grabbed Gyema's wrist with so much strength he broke it. Usually, I don't like to take part in unnecessary business and will let someone else do it for me. However, you and your guild have forced me to make an exception. He then raised his right hand. First, you humiliated Yukino in a way that is completely unacceptable. Even a cold-hearted bastard like me would never think about mocking a young woman in such way, just because she is weak. You disgusted me, so I decided to teach you and your so-called strongest guild a lesson. Naruto then created an normal-sized Rasengan in his hand, which was then surrounded by 3 smaller rotating orbs of chakra, in a similar manner to moons around a planet. And second, you, the person who is supposed to be the one who guides the youngsters to greatness, Naruto the raised Gyema, who was struggling to free himself, made them violate a rule that I hold dear even to this day. That's something I cannot forgive. You, what are you? Gyema said as he looked at Naruto. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. Who are you? Naruto Uzumaki, stop at this instant. Lahar and Doranbolt of the Magic Council appeared, bringing an entire platoon of guards with them. Don't do it! Doranbolt cried and tried to stop him. But it was too late. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto said, and that instant, everyone could only look at him in horror when they saw a gigantic fox with 9 tails bearing its fangs hungrily down the guild master of Sabertooth, and that is all you need to know. With that, he slammed the planetary Rasengan into the large man's stomach, blasting him away across the city in a massive and turbulent wave-like vortex, which caused the people around him to raise their arms to shield their faces away from the violent winds. The place fell into silence after that, too shocked to muster a single word. "Men," Lahar suddenly broke the silence with a loud shout, "Bring this man in." The guards nodded their heads nervously. Some of them could still remember how the members of Team Natsu had reacted when they tried to take Jalal Fernandez away. "What?" Yukino gasped. "No, you can't, he's just..." "Like hell, we're going to let you." Natsu grinned sadistically as he punched his palm with a flaming fist. "You heard what the man said, he was just teaching Sabertooth a lesson and punishing them for humiliating Yukino. There's no reason for him to be taken away." "Yeah," Gray said seriously, and Lucy nodded her head in agreement. Here we go again," Urza muttered. Being the reasonable member of the team, she decided to step forward and speak to the head captain of the custody enforcement unit. "Can we talk about this?" "Stay back, all of you." However, Sila was the first to take action. She got in front of her master and extending her hand forward. Looking at her, a demon, some of the guards stepped back nervously. "Master, allow me to." But before she could do anything, Naruto suddenly put his hand on her shoulder and stepped in front of her master. "Now, there is no need for you to step in," Naruto said as his chakra level picked up, causing a golden aura to appear around his body. "I can take care of this myself," he said calmly. His eyes hardened, causing the guards to look at him with even more nervousness than before. "Are you really going to do this? You all saw me handling 100 monsters this morning, right? What can 24 guys do?" His power increased with no limitation, causing the wizards to look at him in bewilderment and find it hard to breathe normally. "Naruto, you can." "Alright, you guys got me." Then suddenly, the golden aura disappeared and Naruto declared with a smile, bringing his hands together in front of him. "Take me to your prison then." EHHH. Yukino and Team Natsu could only look at Naruto in shock. One moment he was more than ready to destroy them, the next he happily let them bring him into custody. "But master..." Sila could only look at him. She was surprised by his decision. "You stay with Urza, for now, Sila," Naruto said as he let Lahar put magic sealing stone handcuffs on his wrists. "Naruto Uzumaki, you are under arrest for attacking the wizards of Sabertooth and destroying several structures of Fiori Capital," Lahar declared. "Oi! What the fuck, man, what are you doing?" Natsu asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "Naruto-sama, what are you doing?" Yukino stepped forward and asked him. "Don't worry, Yukino. I know what I am doing," he said, giving her a quick wink before looking at the blue-haired dragon slayer. "Wendy, you will take over my place in the team. I don't think they will give me a trial at this timing." He then turned to Urza. "Urza, I will give you a few more hours to get the right answer for my test." "Okay, sensei." Urza nodded her head slowly. She didn't know what else to reply. "Time to go, Uzumaki," Lahar said, and with that, Naruto was taken away. The next morning. "Can you sign this for me? My daughter is your fan." "Already?" Naruto chuckled as he moved his hands, which were still cuffed, between the grids of his prison and took the pen and the photo from the guard who was guarding him. "Here you go." He handed back the signed photo and gave the man a grin and a nod of approval. "How old is she?" "She's 18. The guard replied with a shrug. "You know, hormonal teenager, going crazy over guys like you. Good luck, I have been there several times and gone through them all." Naruto smirked, causing the guard to look at him curiously. "What I am trying to say is, teenager daughters can really be a pain sometime." "You're right." The guard nodded his head. "Anyway, can I ask why?" Before he could answer his question, the man pulled his head back and then smashed it against the iron grid of Naruto's prison, knocking himself out. Meanwhile, Naruto wasn't surprised in the slightest. "Master, here you are." The door was forced open and Sila came running in. "I am not surprised to see you here, Sila. I am actually wondering what took you so long," Naruto said with a small smirk. "Master, what are you doing? Why did you let them take you away? Why are you letting you hold you back like a lowlife human like this?" She asked, throwing question after question at him. "One question at a time, please." Naruto chuckled and twisted his hand, breaking the handcuff with ease. "Didn't I already tell you and everyone? I know what I am doing. But the guards will step through that door to take me to the court in 4.5 minutes. If you decide to stay here any longer than that, you will have to open the blood path if you want to get out of here." "Let them come," Sila growled. "I will kill them all myself." "Now, calm down, dear. You don't want to bring your master any more trouble, do you?" he asked, causing Sila to lower her face in shame. "Now, I have a few questions to ask you. Did you watch the third day of the Grand Magic Game this morning?" Sila nodded. Actually, she was forced to watch it, because Naruto had told her to stay with Erza. Did Team Fairy teams win? Unfortunately, Erza and her team didn't do well this morning. Natsu Dragneel got the 6th place in the first game, Chariot. Naruto had the urge to facepalm because just the name Chariot alone hinting that it would include vehicles. Gajeel Red Fox of Team Fairy B got the 7th place, while Sting Eclipse was the last. How did 3 Dragon Slayers get in the game with the name Chariot? Naruto asked in disbelief. Anyway, how was Sabertooth team? They were fine, a few minor injuries there and there. However, I heard their master was still recovering in the hospital. Naruto nodded his head. What about the matchup? The battle between Wendy Marvel and Sherry Ablendi of Lamia Scale ended in a draw, master. Naruto nodded with a smile. Laxus fought a member of Raven Tail, who turned out to be the guild master of the guild. He also brought the entire team with him, but Laxus defeated them all. Raven Tail had been disqualified from the tournament. Sila finished. That's all, master. I see. Thank you for your hard work, Sila. Naruto smiled. Well, time is running out. You should leave, Sila. Are you sure, master? The Aetherius demon asked unsurely. I can make them. You're not the only one who can control other people. Naruto gave her a meaningful wink before saying, go to the bar where Fairy Tail usually gather and wait for me there, okay? Okay, master. Sila nodded her head, but before she could turn away, Naruto put both hands on her cheeks and gently pulled her face toward him to capture her lips in a kiss. I will see you later. After pulling back, he said with a smile before summoning a new magic sealing handcuff to put it on his wrists. I will be waiting for you, my master. Sila smiled, lowering down and picking up the broken pieces of the Magic Council's handcuffs. Sila left after that, and the guards of the Magic Council arrived shortly a few seconds later. Line break. The once loud and cheerful guild was now in dead silence and worry. Inside a famous bar of Fiori capital, the wizards of Fairy Tail were all inside sitting in front of tables, heads either resting on their hands or lying on the tables. Only a few were talking to each other, but what came out of their mouths were mere whispers. For the first time in years, Fairy Tail, the guild that was said to be the loudest and carefree guild, was silent. It wasn't because of the result today, but because of the absence of a certain member of Fairy Tail, who they had grown fond of. This is my fault. Sitting with the members of Team Natsu, Yukino said as she tried to make herself as small as possible. No, it's not Yukino. Erza shook her head and said to her with a smile. But it's because of me, Naruto-sama. He only did what everyone around here would. Gray said as he crossed his arms on his chest and put both feet on the table. Treating your guildmate like that, they cannot call themselves a guild, you know. No. I agree with him. Natsu nodded. Naruto only did what he believed. It has always been one of the most important rules of this guild, Makarov said with a small grin. So please stop being so moody, nay? We will all wait for Naruto-kun's return together, Mira said to Yukino with a warm smile. Yukino wasn't quite convinced, but she nodded her head nonetheless. You're surprisingly quiet, you know? Urza asked Sila, who was sitting next to her with a blank face. I have no reason to talk to any of you, and I also don't want to. Sila replied coldly. Master told me to wait here, he didn't tell me to talk to you. Damn, that cold, Gray commented as he looked at the black-haired demoness. So, what is your story? Mira turned to Sila, but a cold glare from the demon was more than enough to shut her up. Well, I will leave you be then. The model smiled forcefully and looked away. Then, half an hour after that, the door of the bar was opened, and Naruto Uzumaki stepped in with a huge smile on his face. I'm back, he announced his return loudly. Master, Sila said with a small smile before she stood up and ran to his side. Did I make you wait? Naruto questioned. Of course not, Master, Sila said while shaking her head. Naruto. Unsurprisingly after Sila, Mira Jane was the first person to greet him, with Yukino following behind her. How was the trial? It went well, Naruto said with a grin. They let you have a free pass? Urza stood up from her seat and decided to ask him after you sent Sabertooth's guild master and half of its members to the hospital? Can you tell us what happened, Naruto? Makarov asked curiously. Well, I slept through the entire trial, so I cannot remember what they were talking about. Naruto answered with a thoughtful expression, causing the members of the guild to look at him in disbelief, but I was pretty sure that I didn't get a free pass. Well, for start, I have to pay a compensation of 30 million jewels to Sabertooth and 10 million jewels for the damages I caused around the city. 30 million jewels. The entire guild cried out in shock. 40 million jewels? Well, it's nothing I cannot handle. Naruto shrugged his shoulders casually. I mean, I own an island, and a mountain, and I am a rich son bastard who don't know how to spend his money, so yeah, I'm sure that I can handle that money. Seriously? Lucy asked, what else? Well, I have been banned from Fairy Tail Team A, and also forbidden to participate in the Grand Magic game ever again. Naruto said with a nod of his head, but it's not like you guys need me to win or anything, right? I'm forced to participate in this event, to begin with. The members of Team Natsu could only nod their heads at his logic, that's all. Man, that's really bad, Natsu commented. But it could have been worse, Lucy pointed out. Giemma is mostly still alive, so aside from the Guild War law, I didn't violate anything, Naruto said as he held up his hand. So good luck from now on, brats. I'm out. That is, too bad then, Mira said with a nod of her head. So please drink, eat, celebrate, do whatever you want to do to boost your spirit. You guys still have 2 days to prove yourself, the immortal shinobi said as he waved his hands dismissively to the members of Fairy Tail before turning to Yukino. Can I talk to you for a second? Me? Yukino asked, pointing at herself. Yes, you. Naruto nodded his head and turned to Sila. Sila, please wait here. The demoness nodded, but immediately cursed in displeasure after her master had looked away and walked out of the guild with Yukino. Line break. Naruto-sama, You're welcome, Naruto said while grinning broadly. The two had taken their seats on a bench facing the river outside of the bar, with Naruto being more comfortable than Yukino, who tried to sit as far away from him as possible. You want to thank me, right? Please say that you want to thank me. I do. Yukino nodded her head. It's just what? Why, Naruto-sama? I'm just a stranger, so why did you go so far just for me? Didn't I already explain my reasons last night? He replied with his own question. But, you know, sometimes you really don't need a reason to want to do something, he said, leaning his head back. You want to do it, then you do it. Have confidence in yourself, and do whatever you want to do. He would never say this, but Yukino reminded him of someone he used to know and loved with all of his heart. I see. Yukino nodded her head with a small smile. Can I ask you something, Naruto-sama? Go on. What was that rule? She asked, the rule that you said Gyema-sama made everyone violate? Well, if my memory doesn't fail me, then it goes on like this. He began, those who break the rule are trashed, but those who abandon their friends are worse than. But he was interrupted when Yukino leant forward and placed her lips on his cheek, kissing him softly. After 2 seconds, she pulled back, blushing slightly. Thank you, Naruto-sama. She said with a smile, thank you, for everything. Ha! Naruto grinned, so, what are you going to do now, Yukino? I don't know, Naruto-sama. Yukino shook her head. It's just. She sighed longingly. Why don't you join Fairy Tail? He asked, making Yukino widen her eyes in surprise. Yukino said, but Naruto-sama, your guild are so strong, I'm not sure I can. Matt, aren't we currently the lowest group in Fiori? Naruto asked. You will be fine, so don't worry. I think Makarov isn't too picky about new members. He eyed her up and down, and with that kind of body, I doubt that he will manage to disapprove you joining us. Is that so? Yukino nodded her head slowly. Come on. Naruto said as he stood up from the bench. Let's get you a guild mark, shall we? Yes. She stood up and followed him. But Naruto-sama, did the Magic Council really let you have a free pass just like that? Of course, why wouldn't they? Naruto smirked mysteriously and walked away. Earlier that day, Naruto Uzumaki stepped forward. The man who seated in the middle of the court spoke up loudly. I'm here, Naruto said casually as he walked forward and stood in front of the members of the Magic Council. Naruto Uzumaki, you are. Can I have your attention, please? Naruto suddenly interrupted him and spoke up loudly, causing the old wizards to look at him weirdly. Good now. He dropped his hands to the side, breaking the handcuff in the process. Before any of them could react, he continued, I don't have all day, so can you please make this easy for me and listen to what I have to say, so we can discuss this in a peaceful manner? Chapter 14. Here you go. Naruto said brightly as he handed Minerva Orlando, the daughter of Gyema, who was the master of Sabertooth Guild and the old man that Naruto beat up so bad, and also without an ounce of respect for the elderly, he had to stay in the hospital and receive magical medical treatments for a few more days to get back to his feet. A pair of suitcases, 30 million jewels, hope you guys don't take it too hard. Naruto continued as he looked at the people standing behind her. The whole team was present, and they were looking at Naruto warily as all 4 of them had been completely destroyed by him that night, unlike their leader, who was looking and smiling at him. Don't worry. Minerva said as she accepted the suitcase from the blonde. He really deserved that. She said, looking at Yukino. The former member of Sabertooth was looking at her former teammates nervously while standing beside Sila, who was looking at the wizards of Sabertooth as if she was daring them to try something funny to her master. I guess he's even worse as a father, isn't he? Naruto asked amusedly before adding when he saw her opening her lips to answer, don't need to answer that, it's not my place to poke into your family businesses. It's all right. He has never been much of a father to me anyway. I must admit it was very satisfying seeing you blasting him through 12 blocks last night. Minerva smiled as she placed a hand on her hip. You have put an end to my father's reign of terror, and according to his logic, Sabertooth has no need for a loser. Ah, so you are intending to kick him out because he got beaten up by me? What are you going to do next? Taking his place and becoming the new guildmaster? Then you will do what? Naruto asked with a small smirk and continued before she could say anything. Kick yourself out? Kick those guys standing behind you out? Kick everyone out? Naruto asked, his expression darkened slightly. Last time I checked, I beat up every single one of them. I didn't do anything to you, but I could have detonated those explosive tags. Wouldn't that make you a loser? What are you trying to imply, Yuzu? I'm not trying to imply anything. It's just that I'm hoping that you don't take your father's logic and make it yours. Girl, I can read you like an open book. I know exactly what you are trying to do next. He shrugged his shoulders with a smile. My only advice for you, don't, okay? You're your father's daughter, but do not become someone like him, and fall into his footsteps. Like you said, I have put an end to little Jimmy's reign of terror within Sabertooth, so I think you should really consider it the new beginning for you and everyone. He gave her a grin before turning around and walking away. So see you guys around, tigers. When he was standing next to Yukino, he turned back and placed a hand on the celestial mage's head, making her blush slightly. Also, Yukino belongs to Fairy Tail. You want her back? Well, figure that out yourself then, I don't care. He chuckled. Sila, we're leaving. Yes, master. The demon nodded and ran to his side. As the members of Fairy Tail followed them, Yukino stopped suddenly and turned around to bow her head low to her former teammates, saying apologetically, I hope we will see each other again. With that, she followed her new guild, leaving the area. What an interesting guy. After a moment of silence, Minerva finally said with an amused smile and left with her teammates. What he said to her. It really didn't sound so bad. Man, is it okay to give away that much money? Natsu questioned as he looked at Naruto. Personally, he had never seen that much money in his life. An S-class mage could make a lot of money with just one mission, but it would take them no less than a couple dozens to make that much. Where did you get so much money from anyway? Well, I'm a writer. When he noticed the way they were looking at him, he added, I'm serious. I'm so surprised, Yukino said with a smile. He really didn't look like a writer to her. I'm sure you are and will continuously if you start hanging around me. Naruto chuckled. You're a writer too? Lucy managed to ask. Now that he had revealed it, it had become clear to her, as Lucy had always wondered why he could give her so many amazing writing tips for her novels. But I have read a lot of best-selling books in the last 20 years and I have never found your name on any of them. Lucy, here is another lesson you need to learn to become a successful writer. Never use your real name. You have to come up with something good, something different, and something eye-catching like Natsu the Jackass, Gray the Erotic Stripper, or something along those lines. He joked, causing both mentioned Dragon Slayer and Ice Mage to become furious. It's just a hobby, actually. I find something interesting, get some inspirations, write them down, making a couple of books and publish them. Boom, I have a lot of money. If only it is that easy for me. Lucy said while chuckling nervously. So can you tell me the names of those books? Urza asked, I would like to read them if you don't mind. Nah, that's for you to figure it out. Naruto said before saying thoughtful, speaking of which. I think we have wasted enough time already. It's time you give me the answer, Urza. He turned to her and giving the red-haired mage a smile. Let's just get back to bar first, please? Urza asked, smiling nervously. Line break. Now remember, wrong answer equal punishment. You have to, hold on, are they instant ramen? Naruto asked in amusement as he looked at the bag on the table. They were back in the guild's usual gathering place and almost everyone was present, even the spirit of First Guild Master of Fairy Tail, Mavis Vermilion. The petite blonde was making herself comfortable on the seat behind Naruto, near Sila, who couldn't see her. Just in case you decide to. Urza said while laughing nervously but hollowly, causing her teammates and everyone else in Fairy Tail to look at her questionably, wondering what kind of punishment could make the mighty Titania of their guild look so nervous. So instead of spending your time finding out the right answer to confidently sit there in front of me, you actually wasted a fully thinking about this? Are you taking this seriously? He asked sternly, causing Urza to look even more nervous. Just teasing you, let's see what you have here. Naruto reached his hand out and grabbed the back before Urza, who looked relief, could take it away. Yes, miso ramen, Akiran ramen, beef and chicken flavored ramen, damn, must have cost a fortune. He said after going through every cup of instant ramen. I think I will take this as payments for your training. Urza looked like a rock had just fallen on the top of her head. Sila, would you mind keeping this for me? Of course not, Master, Sila said, accepting the bag from her master's hands with a shake of her head. But I haven't even. If you want to bribe me, you will have to do better than instant ramen. I like all ramen, but I love handmade ramen more, especially good ones. He turned to Mira and gave her a wink, making her smile in response anyway. Let's hear your answer. Hey, keep quiet for a second, will ya? He spoke up loudly and the bar became silence. Even if they didn't, Sila would surely use her power to make them. She was more than ready to do that to stop them from looking at her. Urza cleared her throat before summoning her notebook with her magic. Actually, I'm torn between two answers. At first, I thought it was a teleportation technique because you could move between different locations in an instant, and I guessed it had something to do with your kunai, the ones with 3 blades. If it weren't, then he would never bring those kunai out and use them to fight you, threw the kunai away, and then disappeared, but you reappeared at their locations, making me believe that the kunai served as markers for your teleportation ability. Naruto nodded, but kept his face straight. However, there's one time I saw you flashing away at locations that didn't have any kunai, and you didn't even throw any of them away, to begin with. Urza took a deep breath before continuing. So, unless you are as fast as the speed of light, Flying Thunder God technique allows you to instantaneously transport yourself to a previously marked location, and the marker being your kunai. Stupid, he's not as fast as the speed of light, he's faster. Sila muttered under her breath, but Naruto and Mavis were the only people that could hear her. You know what? Urza held her breath, waiting for Naruto. You're right, Hirosaki is a teleportation technique. Urza's lips spread out in a huge smile as he continued, summoning a kunai from his Quip dimension and putting it on the table between them. To be more specific, it's a space-time ninjutsu, involving the manipulation of time and space. Urza looked at the kunai when Naruto pointed his hand to the handle. Look, this is the technique formula. It's used to mark an intended location. After the setup is done, it will enter a dimensional void that instantaneously transports me to the location of the seal. The more seals I have, the more locations I can choose to appear from. Man, that's some overpowered technique you have there, man, Gray commented, and the others nodded their heads in agreement. Ninjas are so cool, Natsu said with a face-splitting grin. That is what I am talking about. Naruto said, grinning smugly. It makes us shinobi way cooler than you mages, don't you think? I have to disagree. Makarov chuckled as he drank his beer. More powerful, maybe, but cooler? He shrugged his shoulders, and many members of his guild, even Urza, nodded their heads in agreement. May I ask you a question? Naruto nodded his head and gestured for her to go ahead with his hand. Did Minato-sensei create it? Actually, he completed the technique. Naruto answered, the technique was created by Tobirama Senju, who was the granduncle of my godmother. Oh, okay. Urza nodded before she decided to ask, but what about? Before she could finish her question, Naruto put his hand on the table. I actually don't need the kunai to do it, Urza. It's just a more convenient way to use this technique. He then removed his hand, showing a Hirosaki formula. The mark can be applied to almost any area through physical contact. Actually, if Urza could keep up to his speed during Pandemonium, she would see that he didn't place the markers anyway and moved with the speed that could match Flying Thunder God technique easily. Ah, I see, I understand it now. Urza nodded her head, smiling at him. Master. Before Naruto could say anything, Sila called him in a low tone and tugged on the flap of his jacket to gain his attention. May I ask you something? Go on. Is it okay to let these people know about your ability? Urza, I can understand, but... They know, then what? He answered with a smile. It's not like they can do anything to me, especially when I don't even need Hirosaki to run around at the speed of light. You of all people should know that. Sila nodded her head in understanding. Anyway, Urza, you have very good observation skill. You passed the test, that's all I can say to you for now. Naruto spoke up, turning back to Urza and smiling at her. We will resume your training when the Grand Magic Game is over. He then glanced to the side when he noticed Mavis looking at him with a smile. Smile what? His question, while the members of Fairy Tail thought nothing about, caused Sila to look between him and the empty chair in confusion for a moment before widening her eyes in realization. He must be talking to Mavis Vermilion, she thought. It's nothing, Mavis said with a soft smile and turned away, making Naruto click his tongue and look at her in annoyance because he knew exactly what she was thinking in her head. Ahem, anyway. The third master put his drink down and stood up, speaking up loudly to gain everyone's attention. There is another matter we need to discuss. Since Raventail has been banned from the Grand Magic game by the Magic Council, he said that with a satisfied grin the rest make the tournament rather unbalanced, so they have requested us to choose 5 members from both of our teams and form one single team to participate in the rest of the tournament. Of course, our position will be the position of Team A, since they're in the lead. With this, we will be able to form our dream team, Mikao said with a smile. His adopted son nodded in agreement. But who should we choose? Nab asked curiously, looking at the old master. I want to have Naruto in our team as the leader, but he's banned from the tournament already. Makarov said as he crossed his arms on his chest and tilted his head to the side, so I guess the best choices are. It's obviously Urza, Natsu, Gray, Laxus and Gajiel in the team, with Juvia as your reserve member. Naruto spoke up but looked at Mavis when he heard her saying the same thing. Not exactly what I was thinking about, but not bad. Makarov nodded his head, but may I ask why you two picked this formation? Isn't Mira a better choice than Juvia? Even the water woman had to admit that since Mira was an extremely powerful S-class mage. Juvia is on the team because she can work well with Gray around. Naruto explained, causing Gray to cross his arms in annoyance and Juvia to squeal out in delight and agreement. You should never underestimate the power of love. With the right motivations, Juvia can become as strong if not stronger than Mira. He then continued, since you're all legal guilds, this tournament seems like a good place to settle your differences, so unless you want them to end up like me, why not let Natsu, Gray and Gajiel participate in the tournament since they all have scores to settle with their respective opponents. Naruto explained the same can be said for Urza. Plus, I want her to be there to be a responsible and reasonable leader of the team. Laxus, well, he's there because he's strong. Even I cannot explain it better, Mavis said with a smile, and the wizards of Fairy Tail nodded their heads in understanding. Then that's settled. Urza, Natsu, Gray, Gajiel and Laxus, with Juvia as our reserve member, will represent us and participate in the tournament. He declared, making everyone cheer out in excitement. Yosh! I'm all fired up. Natsu said, grinning sadistically as he thought about beating the shit out of Sting and Rogue. Leave those bastards to me. I'm going to kick all of their sorry asses. That's the spirit. Naruto said mockingly before gesturing his head to the first guild master. Mavis will provide you with the necessary strategies. Your guild's reputation is in your hands now. Don't ask me to help you more than that, since I have been banned, he then added with a smirk, and don't want to. Seriously, can you be honest with yourself for once? Mira asked, smiling in amusement. I don't think I understand what you are trying to imply, Mira. Don't worry, I know you are. The demon responded cheerfully. Hey Naruto, can I ask something? Wakaba Mine spoke up, breathing smoke out of his mouth. When Naruto gave a nod in approval, he asked, where did you find such a hottie? Man, she might even hotter than our very own demon, Mira. It took Sila several seconds to realize that he was talking about her, and when that happened, she turned to the brown-haired man and glared at him coldly, causing Wakaba and the veteran wizards who sit around him to look away uncomfortably and start sweating nervously. I met her a few years ago, Naruto said. That wasn't a lie. He was immortal. 400 years were just a few years for him. She has been sticking with me ever since. He had told Urza the same thing, and fortunately, she bought it without a second thought. That's one hell of a way to summarize a story in a few sentences, man. Simplification is the best way of learning, never forget that. Naruto made a quick wink with his right eye before standing up. I think I should take my leave now. Where are you going? Mavis asked. My house, I'm going back to my peaceful life. You all have been keeping me here long enough. He turned around and walked to the door, with Sila following closely behind him. Don't worry. I will be there to see you guys tomorrow. With that, the two left. Haze. I don't think that demon girl like us very much. Wakaba said, reminding them of the way Sila had looked at them. Man, should have expected that there is no demon like our Mira. He chuckled and picked up his cup, but before he could drink it, Wakaba suddenly splashed the beer on his own face before smashing himself across the face with the empty cup, knocking himself off his chair. The hell, man? Macau asked in shock, while the wizards of Fairy Tail were looking at him with the same expression. What is wrong with you? I don't know, my body just moved on its own. The hurt man said while checking his bloody face. Wendy, can you do something? Line break. Ah, some sweet home. Naruto said loudly in satisfaction as he opened the door of his house and walked in. Suck that I would have to leave this place behind in a few decades. He muttered the last past, just for himself. You look very happy, master. Sila said with a smile before asking as they made their ways into the living room. May I ask why? Isn't it obvious? Naruto grinned as he threw himself on the sofa, leaning his head back with a smile. I got to fight monsters that didn't run away the moment they saw me, beat up some asshole last night, fucked up the entire Council of Magic this morning and manipulated them into giving me a pretty good excuse to get out of this tournament. He reached his arms out and wrapped them around Sila's waist, pulling her toward him and letting her sit on his lap before putting his hand on her thigh. Now, I'm home with the most beautiful, the most amazing girl in the world and some really expensive instant ramen for dinner. The both laughed softly when he picked up the bag Sila put on the table. So can you tell me one good reason I should not be happy? I don't think there is one, master. Sila smiled, shaking her head before kissing him softly on his lips. Naruto smiled and returned it, closing his eyes so he could enjoy her tender lips more. His hand reached under the skirt of her kimono and groped her ass, making the demoness moan in response. After a moment, Naruto broke the kiss, smiling at Sila as she had her arms wrapped around his neck. I'm going to heat up some water for you now, master, Sila said. Cooking she couldn't do, instant ramen was something she could cook in an instant. However, before she could go anywhere, Naruto suddenly grabbed her by the back of her neck and bent her shoulders down the table in front of them, making Sila make a sound in surprise and forcing her to put her arm on the surface to support her body and her legs at his hips. Before she could say anything, Naruto lifted the skirt of her kimono up, exposing her ass and pussy, and pulled down her panty before delivering a hard spank across the right cheek with his right hand. Master. Despite feeling turned on by the position she had been put in, Sila couldn't help but turn her head around and ask him because she had no idea what he was planning to do. Now, before you can get anywhere, there's something we need to discuss. Naruto said, with a sly smirk. Do you remember what I told you before I let the guards of the Magic Council take me away? Stay with Urza, he reminded her, rubbing his hand on her supple ass cheek. Yet you chose to not listen to me and went after your master, thinking that it's the right thing to do. You, my dear, have gone against your master's wish. You must be punished. He said, spanking her again, and as a strict master, I will discipline you myself. He raised his hand and slapped her ass cheek for the third time. Unexpectedly, Sila blushed and moaned in response, making the smirk over his face widen when she slapped her hands on her mouth to stop it from coming out. Era, is that a moan I hear? It's not mater, ah. The Aetherius demon gasped when Naruto gave her ass another hard smash. Now, don't lie to your master. He said, his hand trailed down on the curve of her ass, making the demon shudder when his finger brushed against her womanhood. Well, what do we have here? Naruto took his hand back and looked at his fingers, which had Sila's juice on them. What a naughty demon you are. He commented before placing both hands on her ass. All right. I'm going to punish you, Sila, for going against my order, and for lying to me. I will spank you 20 times, 10 on each, and I want you to count every time. If you miss one count, I will spank you twice as hard and thrice as many, understood? Yes, master. Said a fluttered Sila. Her eyes followed his hand's movement as he raised it into the air beside his hand, palm facing forward. Grinning, he brought his hand down, smacking her right but with enough force to make it sway. One, master. Before she could even finish the word master, he had already backhanded the other left one with the same amount of force too. She moaned out, no longer trying to hide her arousal. 3. She counted when Naruto slapped her ass with his other hand. 4. She shuddered as Naruto kept spanking her. That's 10, my dear, 10 more to go. Naruto said in satisfaction as he looked at her red-ass cheeks. Because of her demon skin, he had to spank her with enough force to send a full-grown man across the room. Even for an Aetherius, Sila's durability and endurance were something that one could take lightly. To respond to his words, the demon simply wiggled her ass as she ground herself harder into Naruto's lap. Naruto continued, and he had to admit that he liked what he was doing. By no means, it was the first time they had done this, but it was the first time in 400 years he had taken the role of a master. He had always loved how submissive she was to him, but he had never considered Sila his servant or wanted her to view him as her master. 10, Master. Sila cried and fell flat on the table, trying to catch her breath. There's no time for you to rest, Sila. I know it's going to take a lot more than that to take you down. Naruto said, releasing his hold from her body. Now, stand up. As if she had been controlled by her own curse, Sila stood up and turned around, standing in front of him. Strip. Smiling, Sila reached behind her back and untied the ribbon that kept her kimono together. Returning her hands to the front, Sila slowly opened the front of her kimono and dropped it to the floor, leaving only her thigh-high socks on her body as she stood naked in front of him. Good girl. Naruto smirked, leaning his back against the backrest of his seat. Now dance. Sila looked at him for a second, but Naruto quickly added with a chuckle, just kidding, I know you cannot dance. I can order myself to, master. She said, smiling at him. I know you can, but we will have time for that later. Naruto said, I'm going to need you to cast your fancy Marco on me next. I believe you know where to. With a nod of her head, Sila used her spell to remove his pant, pulling it down to his ankles and freeing his semi-hard cock. Picking it up and putting it on the spot next to him, Naruto opened his arms. Now come here. Did what she was told. Sila climbed onto the bed and straddled his lap again. However, before she sat down, Sila took hold of his cock with her hand and positioned it at the entrance to her pussy. Holding her by her hips, Naruto watched as Sila lowered her body down, taking his cock into her pussy. Master. Removing his shirt, Sila groaned and started bouncing up and down on Naruto's lap, riding his cock with enthusiasm. Then she stopped jumping and started rolling her hips on his lap, moaning as his cock rubbed every sweet spot inside her for a moment before leaning forward and kissing him passionately. From her hips, Naruto glided his hands up her waist and stopped at her breasts, feeling them jiggling in his palms as he rubbed them together, using his thumb to tease her nipples. Still making out with her, Naruto moved his hip in sync with his Sila, thrusting into her warming pussy every time her ass landed on his thighs. The two moaned loudly while Naruto continued pounding into her while squeezing her breasts with Sila bouncing on his cock, making her come several times. Sila whimpered and leaned her head back as Naruto kissed his way down her neck and rested his face between her beautiful large bust, greedily tasting her soft flesh and sucking on her nipples, earning a moan of approval from her in response. The two stayed like that for a moment until Naruto felt her pussy clenching tightly around his cock, bringing him to his limit. Slamming her ass down his laps, Naruto exploded inside her, filling her womb up with his sperm. Sila caught her breath as she fell forward and rested her head on his shoulder, with her breasts being mashed between them. Smiling, Naruto moved his down to her ass and lifted her up from his cock, causing his semen and her juice to come streaming down to the spot between his thighs before Sila forced her nether lips to close to keep his seeds inside. I hope you have learnt your lesson, Sila. Yes, master. Pulling back, Sila nodded her head with a small smile before pressing her lips against his, allowing him to capture her mouth in another searing kiss. I have learned my lesson. She said after breaking herself from his tongue. What do you want me to do next, master? She asked, smiling seductively. Naruto merely smirked. Chapter 15. Fucking tourists. Naruto grumbled in annoyance as he picked up a crushed bottle with a trash clamp and threw it into the wastebasket he was wearing at his hips, which was already half full after a couple of minutes of trash collecting. The mountain near his house, Mount Mayaboku, had been hidden away by a powerful barrier, but the lands around it was still pretty much an acceptable attraction with amazing views and ideal weathers for camping or sightseeing. Insensible tourists still came every week, and while it was easy for Naruto to deal with them or make sure they would not come ever again, it was troublesome for him to clean up the wastes they had littered all over the places, especially in the forests. "Is there anything wrong?" Naruto looked up from the ground and asked a deer that had approached him and were looking at him curiously with its dark eyes. "I know it's hard, but you guys have to bear with it for now. I will see if I can do anything to stop them from coming permanently." With that, Naruto picked up the last can on the ground and walked away to search for another abandoned camp full of trash to collect. The deer continued to stare at him for a moment, before twitching its head from side to side and leaving, disappearing into the woods. "Master, I'm done over here," Sila announced when she saw her master approaching. The demoness was incinerating the trashes she had collected near the river with a special type of fire spell that could completely annihilate them and also didn't create smoke in the process. With the use of her macro, it was easy for Sila to collect and gather the trashes in a short amount of time without dirtying herself or her clothes. She also used her curse to drive the stupid tourists away on her master's wish from time to time. "Ah, great work, Sila," Naruto said, and the demoness lowered her head gratefully as he turned the basket around to pour the trashes inside into the fire Sila had set up. "There, I think that's the last of them," the blonde said as he threw the last can into the fire. "Seriously, we're only gone for a few days and this is what happened. I can always make sure they will never enter the forest again, master, simply give me the order and I will." "Nah, too much attention and it's the last thing we need. Plus, not every one of them is bad." The blonde shook his head and said, making Sila drop whatever thoughts she had about permanently preventing tourists from entering her master's forests. "Come on, let's head back. We're done here." With a nod, Sila obediently followed her master back to their house near the beach while keeping a considerable distance between the two of them. As they walked, she couldn't help but study his expressions. He had been in the foul mood ever since they discovered trashes in the forest near their home earlier that morning. There might be something that she could do to cheer him up. Making up her mind, Sila quickly caught up with him and said, earning his attention, "Master, I am wondering if we can." Then suddenly, before she could finish her sentence, Naruto turned his head back to the direction of his house and raised an eyebrow in surprise when he saw a familiar person standing at the front door knocking their hand on it before stepping back and waiting for him to answer, not knowing that he wasn't at home. "Hey, isn't that?" he said before calling out loudly with his hand waving above his head, "Hey Mira. Over here." Hearing his call, Mira Jane Strauss turned around and waved her hand at him while giving Naruto her trademark smile that could brighten up anyone's day. She looked as stunning as ever, donning a black dress with large slits on both sides of her skirt while having her white hair braided in the back with black bows and wearing black heels for footwear. "Naruto, there you are," Mira said as Naruto and Sila walked toward her, smiling radiantly as she looked at the tall man, then at his so-called servant, who remained emotionless as she stood beside her master, seemingly indifferent about Mira's presence at their house. However, she was making it quite obvious for the drawing card of fairy tale to see that she wasn't quite pleased to see her there. From what she had learned from Urza, Sila hated everyone but her master. "Where were you going?" "Collecting trashes, but that is not important." He shook his head and continued, "What are you doing here, Mira? Don't you have a tournament to watch? Last I checked we were doing very fine. Laxus took the first place for the team in the first event of the day," the young woman said with a smile as Naruto walked past her to move to the door of his house. "Also, I am here to check on you." Unlocking the door, Naruto asked with a teasing smirk, to which Mira nodded her head in response. "So, you came here because you were worried about me?" He then turned around and headed into his house with Mira and Sila following shortly behind him. "By the way, it's good to hear that everyone is doing fine without me. You brats really need to step up your game if you want to prove yourself to the crowd." He threw the key onto the couch and continued, "You wait here. I'll be back in a second." With that, he left into the kitchen, leaving Mira behind with Sila, who took her seat on one of the chairs and summoned a book into her hands. Mira was left wandering around the living room, spending her time checking out his furniture, which wasn't that special. It wasn't like Mira hadn't been in Naruto's house before, but there wasn't much for her to do while waiting for the blonde to return, especially when there was someone else in the room with her but had no intention of speaking a word to Mira. However, when she grew tired of the silence, she quickly made up her mind and turned to Sila, finally deciding to strike a conversation with the demon. She truly wanted to get to know the demons, mostly because she also had demon powers, and understood more than anyone how hard it was for a demon like her to live in the world of human. We have met, but I don't think I have properly introduced myself to you. My name is... I know who you are. Sila interrupted calmly while continuing to read the book, and I believe you know very well who I am from that girl. Obviously, she was talking about Urza, but Mira nodded her head nonetheless and then answered politely, yes, Urza told me about you. TCH, that girl, she really doesn't know how and when to keep her mouth shut, does she? Sila clicked her tongue in annoyance without looking up from the book. So, you are. I have nothing to tell you, so can you stop talking to me and shut up? With a small sigh, Sila once again interrupted the white-haired young woman before she could finish her sentence, causing a pout to make it to Mira's face as she placed her hands on her hips in annoyance. Urza had warned her about this, and she was expecting the demon to behave like that from what she had seen the previous day, but she didn't expect Sila to be that cold and that hard to talk to. She had had a couple of experiences with demons in the past, but they were all quite easy to handle, unlike Sila. After that, an uncomfortable silence fell between the two, with the horned girl being the one actually taking pleasure in it. Fortunately for Mira, a few seconds later Naruto returned from the kitchen, having washed and dried his hands from all the dirt and stains he had gotten from earlier. What's with the heavy atmosphere? He asked, looking at Mira and then Sila, who finally looked up from the book and shook her head at her master. It's nothing, you should worry, master, she said in a calm tone. Is that so? Raising an eyebrow in wonder, Naruto then turned his head and looked at Mira, who decided to nod her head in confirmation, as she didn't want to get on Sila's bad side more than she already was. Very well then, he said finally, so you really came here to check on me? Hey, it is not that hard to believe, is it? Mira pouted cutely with her hands on her hips, making the blonde chuckle as he poured for himself a glass of water. I didn't see you anywhere this morning, so as soon as the first event was over and I decided to come here to check on you after asking around to make sure that Sabertooth didn't try anything funny for revenge. I know that you're no longer participating in the GMG, but you should have told us you're not coming today. You made a lot of people worry for suddenly not coming, you know. Hey, from the beginning, I have made it quite clear that I want to take no part in this tournament. This is a perfect opportunity for me to have some alone time for myself, you know. The blonde explained with his hands throwing into the air. Plus, who said anything about not coming? I told you yesterday that I would see you guys the following day, and I was actually planning to go to Crocus as soon as I was done cleaning up the forest anyway. Seeing you brats being beaten around is fun, and I also have a few things to teach Urza next, so I think I will stick around for a few days. Oh, is that so? Mira asked with a small smile. Yeah, because why not? It's not like I have anything else to do around here, and Grand Magic Game is supposed to be the greatest event of the year, so don't worry about it. Also, now that you mentioned it, how did you get here? You flew? He asked, knowing that there was no train from Crocus to the nearest station in the area near his house today. I did. Mira answered, nodding her head. What about you? How are you able to travel such long distance in such a short time? I know you are fast and all, but... Want me to show you? He asked, and they offered Mira his hand. The drawing card of Fairy Tail looked at it for a moment before giving Naruto her hand, which was much smaller than his. Sila, you're coming? He asked, turning around to look at his servant, who had put the book back to its place on the bookshelf and stood up, nodding her head. Yes, master, anywhere you go, I follow. With that, she came to stand next to her master, who smiled at her before taking her hand with his other one. Looking at Sila, Mira couldn't help but think that there was something much stronger and deeper than the normal master-servant relationship between her and Naruto. Though, everyone could see that they cared a lot for each other. Even Urza, who had spent 3 months with them, had said she knew very little about their relationship, how they met. Alright, let's go. With that, Naruto disappeared from the house in a flash of yellow, bringing Sila and Mira with him as well. Line break. Man, beating those guys up sure was satisfying. Natsu Dragneel grinned as he kicked the door of the bar open and walked in with his guildmates. The 4th day of the Grand Magic Game had ended with a satisfying result for them. Natsu had single-handedly defeated both Sting and Rogue in the battle event between Fairy Tail and Sabertooth, proving to everyone that Fairy Tail was the current strongest guild in Fiori after their belief in the Tigers had been shaken by Naruto, who had beaten up nearly the entire guild and even the master himself. TCH. I could have done that too. Next time you did something like that, I am going to beat your ass, got it? Gajeel muttered in annoyance as he walked behind Natsu with his hands in his pocket. He had been the one who was paired with the salamander to take on the twin dragon slayers of Sabertooth, making it a fight between dragons. However, much to everyone's surprise, Pinkett had decided to do it himself and pushed him on a cart, stopping him from interfering with the fight. It had proven that Natsu was currently stronger than 2 of the most powerful members of Sabertooth together, but he hadn't been able to do anything and it still annoyed him. Still, a victory was a victory. GRGH, you wanna pick a fight with me now? Natsu growled, want me to take you down too? The Iron Dragon Slayer immediately returned with an evil smile, hardening his skin and covering it in a thick layer of iron. You're very welcome to try, Salamander. Natsu smirked and ignited his fists, causing everyone around him to back away as they all knew what was about to happen. Fortunately for them, before Natsu could make a move toward Gajeel, Naruto, Mira and Sila appeared beside him in a flash of yellow, shocking the Pinkett and knocking him back. That was really something. Mira admitted truthfully as she looked around. Thanks. Naruto smiled at her before he greeted the other members with a smile. Yo! Naruto, Mira, there you two are. Makarov said brightly from his position on a table, already having a cup of beer in his hands. Didn't think you two can make it here. Well, I needed to take care of something near my house first. He said and walked further into the bar with Sila following shortly behind him. Well then, how was it? Did you guys win today? He asked, looking at his student Urza in specific after spotting her standing near Yukino and Lucy. The 2 celestial mages seemed to get along very well. It's obviously, sensei. She said with a small smirk, with her arms crossing on her chest. Good afternoon, Sila. She greeted the Demoness. Urza. Sila nodded her head and said in acknowledgement. Ha, don't get so cocky. Those kids are not at your levels anyway. Naruto smirked, before looking at Yukino, his smile softening a little as he spoke to her. So Yukino, what do you think about Fairy Tail so far? It's very fun, Naruto-sama, and everyone is so nice to me. She said with a smile. It was quite clear for Naruto or anyone to see that Yukino didn't receive the same treatment back when she was still a member of Sabertooth, which turned out to be a guild that valued strength above most. Not exactly everyone, isn't it? Naruto asked as he grabbed the chair thrown at his direction by Natsu without needing to look and placed it down behind him to sit down before ordering a drink from the bartender, making Yukino laugh nervously. Anyway, I am glad to hear that you're enjoying your time here at Fairy Tail. As noisy as it is, this guild is the right place for you. Yukino couldn't help but nod her head in agreement while having a small blush on her cheeks. It's thanks to you, Naruto-sama. Don't mention it. Anyway, Urza. The blonde then turned to his student as he took out a small piece of paper from his pocket and gave it to Urza. I have something for you, here. This is for your next training. What is this? The girl asked in curiosity, looking at the blank paper in her hand. That is chakra paper, made from a special type of tree that is grown and fed with chakra. It's used to determine your chakra's affinity. Urza widened her eyes in surprise as Naruto took out another chakra paper from his pocket and channeled some of his chakra into it, making it split into 2. Much to everyone's shock. Like this, it means my chakra affinity is wind, and I will have an easier time learning to create and control a chakra nature that matches my affinity. But of course, the paper in his hand then suddenly wrinkled. This is lightning. We're not entirely limited to the nature they have an affinity for, and it is in fact common for skilled ninjas to have mastered 2 natures or even more than that. The paper then suddenly got wet and fell down to the floor from his hand. Technically, it is possible for one to master all 5 basic natures of chakra, but it's far too soon for you to even think about something like that, so we will settle with the basic first. Let's see what your chakra affinity is and I will decide your nature transformation training from there. Ugh, all that shit is making my head hurt. Natsu growled while holding the side of his head. Naruto could hear Sila, who sat beside him, making a sound in annoyance and also disappointment. It was quite clear she had much expectation for the strongest demon Zeref had ever created. Those papers are so cool though, can I have one? The Fire Dragon Slayer asked excitedly. Here, have one and leave us. It's useless in your hand anyway. Naruto said and gave Natsu a chakra paper before turning back to Urza as the dragonfire cheered and tried to make it react to his magic channeling your chakra into the paper, and it will react accordingly to your affinity. Okay. Urza nodded her head and did what she was told, closing her eyes to concentrate. Without her kunoichi armor, she didn't have that much chakra to work with. Whoa! Mira and many other members of the guild that were watching all said in amazement as they looked at the piece of paper in Urza's hands as she opened her eyes to see it catching fire. Even Urza were looking at the paper in her hands in surprise. It was quite obvious what her affinity was. So is she going to breath fire too? Natsu asked, crossing his arms on his chest in annoyance. In the future and under my guidance, of course she is. Naruto chuckled before pointing out with a smirk. In fact, there was a clan of shinobi whose members were not truly considered adults until they could successfully perform a certain fire technique, which allowed them to breathe fire from their mouths. So suck it up, brat, you're not the only fire breather here, and definitely not the first in history. Like hell I am. Natsu exclaimed with fire coming out of his mouth, making those who were standing around him panic and quickly get away from him. Okay, so, there are more stuffs to explain to you later, but for the time being, we will stick to your fire nature manipulation training. Naruto said as he turned back to Urza. It'll be much complicated than anything you have ever learned from me, but I expect nothing but the best from you, understand? He finished sternly. I understand. Urza nodded her head and said determinedly. Then, Levi, a member of Fairy Tail, walked in with her teammates and informed them about Ryuzetsu Land as the master left with his grandson and Mavis, all 3 of them wearing a serious expression on their faces that Naruto didn't miss. Oh, is it a swimming pool? Lucy asked. Wendy clapped her hands together with an excited smile. That really sounds great. Is it close? Urza asked. Levi nodded her head as she answered Lucy's question. Yep. It's only a few blocks from here. Ryuzetsu Land is Fiori number 1 summer hotspot, and it's open free for everyone who is participating in the Grand Magic Game. Needless to say, the guild members were totally thrilled about it. Natsu grinned, pumping his fist into the air excitedly. Oh, we're definitely going there. Gray nodded in agreement. It's really hot anyways. Hey, shouldn't we inform Master first? Well, he left somewhere with Laxus, but I don't think this is going to be a problem. Urza answered Lucy's question with a smile, before looking at Naruto-sensei. Are you coming with us? It's free, right? Naruto asked, looking at Levi, who nodded her head in confirmation. Grinning, the blonde leaned back on his chair and put both feet on the table, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Sure, why the hell not? He then turned to Sila and asked, Sila, you come? Yes, master, anywhere you go, I will follow. The Antherius demon answered simply with a nod. Yay! Then let's go! Natsu cheered. Line break. Ryuzetsu Land was huge. The whole place was toasty warm with heat lights that let people get a tan even in the dark of night. There were many different swimming pools and water rides, with a bar in one of the more shallow pools where people could sit in the water and drink to their heart's content. Lucy smiled excitedly upon arrival. This is so awesome. She was wearing a light pink two-piece swimsuit with gold stars patterns. It was her first time coming to a place like this. This place is huge. Wendy clapped her hands together and said in awe. Urza stretched with her arms above her head, making the men drool as the sight of her large breasts clad behind her yellow bikini top. This feels so nice. Indeed, it is. Mira was also in her own swimsuit, a set of white bikinis with bandeau top and a white cloth wrapped around her hip that reached down just above her mid-thigh, covering her white bikini bottom. With her top model body, Mira was definitely the girl that stood out the most in Fairy Tail. Era, Naruto-kun. Mira gaped lightly when she saw Naruto entered the place wearing a black swimming trunk with orange liners. With his lean but muscular body, to say he was attractive would be an understatement, as even among the young men of Fairy Tail who came to Ryuzetsu Land, Naruto was the one who stood out from the most and earned the most attention from the opposite sex. Speechless? Naruto chuckled as he then eyed Mira's swimsuit, before saying, "Not bad, you look great, Mira." He had read a lot of magazines with Mira in swimsuit on the front page, but seeing her wearing them where something revealing was always in real life was always so much better. "Thank you, Naruto-kun." Mira giggled with a hand on her cheek, blushing slightly before she noticed Sila walking in and coming to stand beside her master, with her arms crossing under her ample bust. She was wearing a set of bikinis that matched her hair's color, with the straps of her top going around her neck, and an oversized hat overhead to hide her horns to prevent unwanted attentions. "Master." She greeted him when he turned his head to look at her. "Damn, Sila." The blonde commented in astonishment while eyeing Sila from head to toe. It was not the first time, but it had been a while since the last time he saw her in a swimsuit, but she had never ceased to amaze him with how sexy she could look in them. "You look amazing." Thank you, master. I'm glad you like it," she said while smiling happily, but Naruto's attention was then drawn to somewhere else. "Look guys. It's a water locomotive." Natsu cried out excitedly as he sat on a sizable moving train moving on the water. Ugh. Immediately after that, he fell flat on the toy with his face turned green. "Then why did you even get on it?" Naruto shouted mockingly before shrugging his shoulders in disappointment as Lisanna then jumped into the water and swam toward Natsu to get him off the train. "At least he didn't vomit in the pool right away," Urza commented while Naruto was glancing around. He could see a lot of people around the resort, from citizens to members of the teams participating in the GMG, even if it was nighttime. He also noticed Elfman and Evergreen, a female member of Lax's team, hiding together behind a boulder, so he couldn't help but ask with a small, knowing smirk, "Hey Mira, where is your brother?" "Elfman? You know, I haven't seen him for a while." "I wonder." She tapped her chin thoughtfully. "I see." Naruto nodded his head in understanding. "Anyway, you want to go grab a drink with me?" Naruto asked, pointing his hand to the nearby bar. "Of course, I'd love to, Naruto-kun," Mira said with a smile, before following Naruto as Sila also did the same. Chapter 16. "Master, can I ask you a question?" Naruto nodded his head as Sila's request, allowing her to continue. "Why are we following them?" she asked, turning her eyes slightly to the side to look at Natsu with the rest his team and Yukino, who had become a member of Team Natsu ever since the moment the pink-haired dragon slayer realized her friendship with Lucy. The group was currently making their way through a mine under Domus Flow with Gejil, the Iron Dragon Slayer, leading the way. The place was dark, so they had to use magic lamps to be able to see where they were going. "Why should we not?" Naruto asked, amused by his Demoness lover's question and mood. She hit it well, but he knew she was rather displeased with his decision to come with Team Natsu to an area Gejil had discovered during his and Natsu's battle against the twin dragon slayers of Sabertooth earlier that day on Urza's request. It seemed no matter how many years had it been, she seemed to forget that he did not need to use his powers to read her. "It's not like we have anything to do at the bar anyway." "You want to stay there with all those drunk idiots around you?" Sila shook her head. "Yup, I thought so, and you gotta admit that seeing these brats in trouble is funny and entertaining. As soon as the party at Ryuzetsu Land was over, that it ended with a massive fight caused by Natsu and the rest of Fairy Tail, Sila had ditched her bikini and gone back to her normal outfit, claiming that humans' clothes were too uncomfortable for her to wear. Naruto had been a bit disappointed when he saw Sila throwing the bikini into a trash can, but he had also secretly felt glad for her because she had been able to make her own decision despite knowing her master loved to see her wearing that outfit. "What did you find down here, Gajeel-san?" Wendy asked curiously while looking around. So far there wasn't anything out of the ordinary yet, as the mine looked completely normal. "Shut up and follow me," the Iron Dragon Slayer said firmly as he walked ahead of them. He looked very serious. "Why only us though?" Natsu asked in annoyance. He would rather go back to the bar and have a fight with everyone there. "Is it something related to dragon slayers?" "Obviously, if not, the Gajeel wouldn't ask those two only to follow him," Lily pointed out as Happy's question with his arms crossing on his chest. "Still, even if you say so," Carla stated before turning her head around to look at the other members of Team Natsu with Naruto and Sila, who were following shortly behind the trio of dragon slayers. "There are onlookers too." "Whatever," Gray said curtly. "Sorry, we're curious." Lucy chuckled as Yukino also nodded her head in agreement. Urza, meanwhile, were examining the place closely, with a magic lamp in her hand. There is nothing strange about this place though," she said while rubbing her chin thoughtfully, scanning the area around her. "Sensei, can you tell anything?" She looked around and asked the young man who had become her teacher, who shook his head as he walked behind them with his hands in his pocket. "I see." The party continued to travel for another 5 minutes or so, before Gajeel suddenly stopped and raised his lamp above his head before speaking up seriously. "We're here." What they saw caused everyone, especially the other dragon slayers, to drop their mouths and widen their eyes in shock. Although she was able to keep her cool, even Sila was surprised by what she was seeing, and her master, meanwhile, simply raised an eyebrow in wonder, because as far as he could see the ground in front of them was covered in bones of creatures that he knew too well. "This is..." Wendy exclaimed in shock. "What's this?" Yukino muttered while covering her mouth. "They look like animal bones?" "Not just any animal," Naruto stated as he stepped forward and created an orb of light that greatly resembled a small sun from the palm of his hand before sending it to the other side of cave, where it hovered a few feet above the ground and illuminated the entire area with its light. "These are dragon bones. We're in some kind of dragon graveyard." Natsu gulped nervously and nodded his head in confirmation. All of these are dragon bones?" Urza asked in surprise while looking around. "There are so many of them. This will confirm the existence of the dragons," Yukino said and then questioned in wonder. "But I don't understand. Why are there so many dragons here? Did something happen at this place in the past? Maybe Igneel is also happy." Carla scowled at the blue exceed, causing him to stop speaking and quickly cover his mouth with his paws, realizing what he just said subconsciously. Sorry," he said apologetically to Natsu, to which the Fire Dragon Slayer shook his head in denial. "No, Igneel is not here," he confirmed seriously. "Yes, our dragons disappeared 14 years ago." Gajeel nodded his head in agreement. "The ones lying here are from much more ancient times." That's it, Milky Way," Wendy suddenly said, remembering one of the secret techniques of her dragon slaying magic. "We might know what happened here with Milky Way." "What do you mean, Wendy?" Lucy asked curiously. "It's one of the techniques my mother, Grandini, left behind to my," she explained. "Listen to the voices of dragons, connected to the river in the sky. I first thought it was an attack type of magic, but I understand now. I think it's for this moment. With Milky Way, we might be able to listen to the voice of the dragons who has become souls." So, you mean we can talk to them?" Urza said as she crossed her arms on her chest, before nodding her head. "That's good. If we can hear them, then we might know what happened, and we might even be able to find out something about their disappearance 14 years ago too." Both Natsu and Gajeel widened their eyes at the possibility. Naruto, on the other hand, decided to take a step back and lean towards Sila to whisper something into her ear, in such a low voice that no one but the demoness could hear what he was telling her. "Yes, I understand, master," Sila said firmly and nodded her head when Naruto finished. "You can leave it to me." It didn't take it long for Wendy to finish the preparation for her magic, drawing a magic circle and runes on the ground using a long stick. "Okay, I think I got it," she said with a smile and dropped the stick onto the ground while standing in the center of the magic circle. "I was using the wrong letter because I thought it was an attack type of magic." "I see, so this is Milky Way." Lucy nodded her head while studying the runes on the ground. She was no expert, but she could understand some of them, and most of the runes on the ground were about dragons and their journey to the afterlife after deaths. Wendy then held her arm to everyone. "Everyone, please step back." And they did what they were told, giving Wendy some space to cast her magic as the young girl fell to her knees and put her hands together in front of her chest, closing her eyes and starting to chant. "Wandering souls of the dragons, I'm ready to receive your voices." She then moved her arm overhead and shouted, "Milky Way." As she finished chanting, the runes within the magic circle Wendy had drawn on the ground started glowing brightly and shot up above them as a giant pillar of green energy before scattering across the area around them as small particles of light, falling onto the bones of the dragons lying on the ground. "It's beautiful." Yukino smiled as she said. "This is a bit scary though," Lucy said nervously as she quickly hid behind Natsu as the bones started rattling and shuddering, as if the dragons were slowly coming back to life. "Hold on, I'm looking for remnants of dragon souls." Wendy's eyes snapped wide open when she noticed a small light coming from one of the bones on the ground there. "I found it." Quickly, the Sky Dragon Slayer clasped her hands together and concentrated, causing the magic circle around to release even more energy, which then swirled at one point in the air and expanded greatly in size. "Is that a soul?" Then suddenly, from the vortex of green energy, a massive, ghostly green claw with dark talons reached out, shocking almost everyone who was watching and making them pale nervously when an entire dragon appeared, with a flat skull, a flat nose and a very big jaw. His ears tapered off to one side and featured darkened ends, with two long strands of hair on his chin. On its back, the dragon sported a large pair of wings, and in between said wings laid a row of spikes that traveled down his spine. He roared down at them, causing the dragon slayers, celestial summoners and exceeds, to become frightened and step back in fear. Urza flinched in surprise and almost summoned her sword, but stopped at the last second when she remembered the dragon in front of them was only a soul, but she kept looking at it cautiously. Naruto and Sila, on the other hand, didn't react at all to its sudden act. Then suddenly, the dragon broke out in laughter before looking down mockingly at them. "It's always funny to see people's shocked face, after all," he said with his arms putting in front of his chest before continuing his Natsu when the rest became speechless. "My name is Zirconis, also known as the Jade Dragon." He then looked around. "The spell used to summon my soul must be Grandini's, correct?" It didn't take it long for him to notice Wendy, and when he did, he lowered his head down to look at the young girl. "Cute. So, this little dragon slayer summoned me?" "Hey, back off!" Natsu exclaimed as he stepped in between them. No, I'm going to eat this girl," he roared. "Bastard!" The Jade Dragon then paused for a second, before sneering humorously at Natsu. "Relax, it's a joke. You humans are such a stupid race. Look." He then waved his talon at Wendy, but it harmlessly went right through her. "What can a ghost go?" "Ah ha ha." It only made Natsu become even more annoyed than before, but there was nothing that he could do. "Stupid. What a waste of master's time," Sila muttered as she turned away, and even Naruto had to admit she wasn't wrong. What is wrong with this crazy person?" Lucy asked while smiling forcefully. "He's a dragon, Lucy-sama," Yukino reminded him, but she was also having the same thought. "Correction, it's a soul," Gajeel pointed out in annoyance. "My name is Zirconis, also known as the Jade Dragon." Zirconis then suddenly stated absent-mindedly. "We heard you the first time." Gray yelled at him dramatically. Losing her patience, Carla stepped forward and decided to ask him, "Excuse me, but what happened to you, and what happened here?" Zirconis looked up, growling. "I have no business with humans." "Go away! Away!" "Then answer me. I am a demon." Sila spoke up emotionlessly and also sounding impatiently, causing Zirconis to snap his head around to look at her. "Okay, let's see. It started roughly 400 years ago." "The hell is wrong with you?" Gray asked, sweat dropping nervously. Zirconis rubbed his chin thoughtfully before starting. 400 years ago, dragons were the kings of the world. We could freely fly through the sky, walk the earth, and cross the sea. Everything was ours, and human beings were nothing more than our food, well, except one. He suddenly pointed out, causing Sila to widen her eyes cautiously before preparing to use her curse on Wendy, but what Zirconis said next while sweating nervously made Sila stop. "I have never met him, but there were rumors about this man. He was powerful, too powerful. The gods, they feared him, and the dragons, even the strongest among us, did not dare to face him. However, with all the powers that he had, he chose to live peacefully, and most of us were wise enough to leave him alone, most of us anyway." Zirconis shrugged before continuing, "Well, I also heard he had a female demon like this one followed him around, acting as his bodyguard or something like that, but she was no match for us dragons." He pointed at Sila while the others could not find any word to describe their feeling about the existence of a man who was feared by dragons. "So Sila was not the first demon who could coexist with human?" Naruto asked, smirking. "Ah yes, speaking about coexistence, let's go back to the story. There was a foolish dragon that started questioning the sovereignty of our species. He talked nonsense and desired a world where dragons and humans could coexist. He even went as far as creating a nation where two species lived with each other in peace and harmony, taking in everyone who followed his ideal." "What about you?" Lucy asked shakily. "Well, I don't like humans, but I do love them as foods." "You're talking to food though," Natsu pointed out while trying to hold back his laughter. "And you're getting on my nerve," the dragon shouted back, sounding a bit annoyed. Anyway, a war broke out between the dragons that approved of his ideal, and the ones who were against it. He resumed the story. "The war continued for a very long time, ruining many countries, many nations, until the dragons that supported coexistence came with a foolish strategy." His tone became serious, causing the humans to widen their eyes in surprise as they listened on. "They taught humans magic to slay dragons, and asked them to join the battle." I see, so it was how dragon-slaying magic was created." Lucy nodded her head nervously. "The powers of the dragon slayers were immense, and not only that, they also earned the support of the man who we feared, so it was clear that the dragons that wanted coexistence were going to win. But there was a miscalculation," he explained, raising his claw. "The dragon slayers who had become too powerful started to kill dragons on their side too, and among them there was one who bathed in too much blood of dragons. You know, I am scared to even say his name." Zirconis shook his head, sweating bullets as he continued his story. "The man who supported coexistence did not hate us, so he didn't try to kill our species given chances, but the dragon slayer, meanwhile, murdered countless dragons and kept on bathing in their blood, so eventually, his skin became scales, his teeth became fangs, and he gradually started to look more and more like a dragon." A man became a dragon?" Lucy said fearfully while Natsu and Gajeel could only listen on, both thinking about a possibility where they overused their magic and became dragons. "Yes, that is how dragon-slaying magic evolves within a slayer." Zirconis nodded. "You see, every dragon sleeping here was actually murdered by that man, who hailed himself as the king of dragon when the true king mysteriously disappeared from the world despite only being a man. The war that gave birth to him was called Ruosai, the festival of the Dragon King." He paused for a second, closing his eyes before saying the name of the king was Acnologia, the black dragon of Apocalypse. Horror and shock washed over everyone as Lucy cried out so loud it echoed through the mine, and Natsu sweated and clenched his fists so hard his hands became pale. The memories of Acnologia attacking them and nearly ending their life and destroying everything that they cared about flooded into everyone's mind but Yukino's, Naruto's, and Sila's. Acnologia was human. Urza said finally, breaking the silence. I cannot believe it. What happened to the nation where humans and dragons coexisted? Yukino suddenly asked, did Acnologia? Ah well, even the prideful Dragon King is not that foolish to attack a nation that is under the protection of that man. They said he was the only one capable of taking Acnologia down, something that not even every dragon here was able to do. Zirconis pointed out when I was still alive, the nation was still growing strong, despite the king being slayed in battle. However, since you humans know nothing about it, I believe it. However, before he could finish, Zirconis disappeared, fading away completely as particles of light fell down around them from where he stood. Hey wait! Natsu shouted in surprise. He vanished. Gray exclaimed, we still have a lot to ask. Wendy! He turned his head and looked at the Sky Dragon Slayer, who stood up and shook her head sadly. Sorry, his aura has completely vanished. I think he has entered Nirvana, and can finally rest in peace. She finished. Well? Naruto suddenly spoke up, faking his surprise. Isn't that one hell of a history lesson? Indeed. Lucy could only nod her head in agreement. So, dragon slayers will one day become dragons. Urza concluded as he looked at Natsu and the other two dragon slayers. She suddenly shivered at the thought of being stuck in the form of a dragon, and couldn't help but feel sick, but didn't know why. Does that mean you guys will turn into dragon if you use too much dragon-slaying magic? I don't want to. Both Natsu and Gajeel cried out, while Wendy nervously held her cheeks with both hands, thinking about what kind of terrible dragon she would become. That's actually impossible. Suddenly, they heard a voice, and everyone snapped their heads around to see a man that walked toward them, wearing a set of armor with a red cape coming from his shoulder guards. His hair was dark and wavy, sticking up around his head, with prominent sideburns that joined into a curved and pointed beard. Arcadio-sama? Yukino exclaimed before anyone could say anything or ask his identity. You know him? Lucy asked in surprise. Yes, he is the head of the Holy Chivalric Order of the Cherry Blossoms, a part of the army of the kingdom. He tried to recruit me into his squad when I left Sabertooth, but I chose to become a member of Fairy Tail instead. She answered Lucy's question before turning back to look at the knight. What are you doing here, Arcadio-sama? And why are you saying that it's impossible for us to become dragons? Dragons? Natsu asked cautiously. I'll explain. We, the army, need the power of a celestial wizard for a certain plan, so I come here to look for Yukino and Lucy to ask them for their help. TCH, I don't understand a thing what you are talking about. Natsu said as he stepped forward and made his way toward Arcadio's. Stop saying complex thing and tell us what you truly want. Ah, you're Natsu Dragneel-kun, are you not? The knight smiled. I watched your fight earlier today, and it was really wonderful. However, Natsu got none of it, and stomped his foot in front of Arcadio's, leaning his head forward to glare directly into his eyes, growling threateningly. I don't care. I'm more interested to know why you need them. If you've got something to say, then say it clearly. Arcadio smirked, and instead of answering his question, he turned around and walked away, saying, please follow me, I'll explain everything, because if this plan is successful, we will be able to defeat both Zeref and Acnologia. What? Urza asked in surprise. While the others also shared the same feeling while following Arcadio's, Sila quickly caught up to Naruto and asked him. Master, do you know what is happening? What is this talk about defeating Zeref-sama? She could tell just by looking at her master that he knew something about it. You'll see, Sila. He said quietly, putting his hands in his pocket as he trailed behind the back of the group. Man, this day is getting better and better. It had been a while since he had become so interesting in something, and so far Fairy Tail, mainly Natsu and his team, had not ceased to amaze him by how much trouble they could get themselves into, and how important their roles were going to be in the upcoming event. Line break. As Arcadios led them out of the mine and walked toward Mercurius Palace, Natsu became impatient and decided to ask, what the hell are we doing here? You will see when we are inside. Arcadios answered grimly, you see, before I tell you the whole truth about this plan of us, you should know that the Grand Magic Games is simply an event for us to obtain a vast amount of magic powers from the strongest wizards. So, you have been stealing magic every year. Gajil commented in annoyance, tch, we should have known guys like you would try something like that. You can say whatever you wish. It was all for the sake of our project. Arcadios shook his head before continuing, Eclipse, the door that can change the world, we need a vast amount of magic power to use it. At the back of the group, Sila widened her eyes and was about to blurt out something, but stopped when Naruto turned around and covered her mouth with his hand. We're here. The knight declared as he led them into a massive room, where an enormous gate stood in the middle, almost touching the ceiling. It had a door with an elaborate design, and at the center was a sun with a darkened moon below it. The lower section of the door was dark blue with golden lines, while the upper section was green and split into 12 segments. Around the sun were several circles, the innermost one connecting the moon and 12 holes, one in each segment. There was a set of steps led up to the door and 2 pillars stood on either side with an arch connecting them. In addition, the arch also had an emblem of an eclipsed sun atop of it. What the hell is this? Natsu asked while looking up at the gate. When the sun and the moon intersect, open the door with the 12 zodiac keys, Arcadios started seriously to travel back 400 years and defeat Zeref before he was immortal. That is the meaning of the Eclipse project. Everyone once again was shocked to the core as none of them could see it coming, and they could only look at the gate, with their mouths gaping wide open. Master, this is the gateway that changes the world. Yukino muttered while covering her mouth with her hand. She finally understood. T traveled back in time? Lucy asked, how is that possible? You see, our researches tell that time flows differently in the celestial spirit realm. Arcadios explained and Lucy nodded her head in understanding, as she and her friends knew about it better than anyone else. We want the help of a celestial wizard to cross the boundary line of the spirit world to open the door, because they are the only ones who can use celestial magic. At first, we were meant to substitute the celestial wizard with pseudo-magic, but with 1 here and 12 golden keys, this project will be even more perfect. It's absolutely necessary. He then turned around to look at Lucy and Yukino. Tomorrow, on July 7th, I would like you to help us, Lucy Dano, Yukino Dano. Eh? Lucy blurted out in surprise, but it was the Dragon Slayers who were more shocked by the date than anyone else. July 7th? The same day our dragons vanished, is it a coincidence? Wendy questioned in wonder. Stop right there. However, before anyone could ask anything more, they heard a shout and turned around to see men wearing armors and carrying weapons rushing at them in a hurry. In quick succession, the armored men surrounded everyone and pointed the tips of their weapons at them, including Arcadios, who was just as shocked as the wizards of fairy tale. Here comes trouble. Naruto chuckled as he stepped back and allowed Sila to act on pure instinct and stand protectively in front of him. Rune Knights? Lucy exclaimed in worry. The knights at the front moved to the sides and made way for an old, hunched man with a pair of big ears, hammer-shaped eyebrows and a scar on the left side of his face to step forward. He wore a dark cap that covered most of his forehead, a light-colored robe under a dark vest and a simple pair of shoes for footwear. What is this? Arcadios asked while looking at the short old man, Minister Darton. What does this mean? I should say that it's absolutely outrageous that you would reveal national top-secret information to outsiders, Arcadios-san. Darton answered sternly. They're not outsiders. Arcadios retorted angrily, as you probably know, they will have an important role in this plan. That isn't something so easy that you can decide on your own. You're just against this project. Please stop this nonsense. Of course, I'm against it. Darton screamed, sounding even angrier than Arcadios. You want to alter history. Can you even imagine how dangerous that might be, Brat? Immediately, Arcadios was silenced, and unable to find a word to return Darton's statement. Now that you mention it, I think he's right. Happy said with his head down. If you change the past, then the present. It will change too. Carla finished her fellow Exceed's statement with a nod. Now, I am arresting you, Arcadios, for treason against the country. Darton declared, pointing his hand at Arcadios, who was shocked to the core. I'm going to arrest Yukino Aguria and Lucy Hartfilia as well. Guards, take them away and dispose the rest. The Rune Knights followed his lead and they all went to apprehend the three mentioned. What? Why us? Lucy exclaimed in shock, while Yukino could only look around nervously. Like I am going to let you bastards take our friends away. Arcadios shouted in alarm. Stop. You must not use magic in here. But his words fell into deaf ears, as Natsu rushed forward with his flaming fist and prepared to attack the ones who tried to capture Lucy and Yukino. Darton didn't look worried. Before Natsu could do anything other than that, the fire from his hand disappeared. Natsu widened his eyes in surprise, and felt a massive weight pressing down his body, slowing his movement and clouding his mind. Do you know that the Grand Magic Game is a system to steal small parts of magic from wizards to send it the Eclipse Gate? The old man said as Natsu lost his consciousness and fell to the ground. However, if you try to use your magic here, it will be absorbed completely. He then turned to the rest of the mage. Do not resist, wizards unable to use magic aren't considered enemies by our army. With that, the knight continued with their order and approached the group. One particular soldier tried to apprehend Naruto, who stood still with his hands in his pockets, but before he could do anything to him, he was violently kicked away to the other side of the room by a very angry Sila, who then turned to the rest and gave them a murderous glare, immediately making them back away while looking at her fearfully. You dare try to lay your hand on my master, filthy shit? She asked, with a bluish aura covering her entire body. Much to everyone's surprise, the gate did not react to her powers, and did not suck it away like how it did to Natsu. How? Call the entire army, because these lots here won't be able to stop her. That's something I can guarantee. Naruto said with a small chuckle, as the minister and the knights looked at her with shock in their eyes. Their bodies were completely frozen by fear. Guys, we're done here. It's time for us to leave. Naruto said as he casually stepped forward and bent down to pick up Natsu by his scarf, effortlessly lifting the young man up before placing the unconscious young man on his shoulder. Stop, you think I will let you? Yes, you will. We're walking out of here and there's nothing you can do to stop us. You cannot arrest us too, since we have done nothing wrong. It was Arcadios who decided to tell us what you called national secret. Naruto said matter-of-factly as he walked away with Sila following shortly behind him. The two were soon followed by the rest. Only Arcadios decided to stay behind, as he was willing to turn himself in for the sake of the plan. You're merely an old man who has no powers, only authorities over some powerless men who wear armors and carries weapons, but these brats here can easily take you all down without their magic. Urza alone can do it. Natsu fell because he's stupid, but do you really think the rest of them will make the same mistake? Do you think wizards are truly powerless without their magic? He asked, pausing for a second before continuing. I come here for the amusement, but you are the clown of the day. Line break. TCH. I am so gonna punch those bastards flying the next time I see them. A very annoyed Natsu declared while punching his flaming fists around. He had woken up a moment earlier, but he was still recovering from the magic that he had lost. The core members of the guild had been gathered in a local bar, with the first and second masters sitting on the table and the others sitting on chairs around them, listening to what Urza had to tell about the time-traveling plan that would take place tomorrow. On Naruto's request, she told them everything, without holding anything back. I see, so the royalty actually have a plan like that? Makarov inquired while nodding when Urza finished. I can hardly believe it. It's still the best they can come up with. Zeref is powerful dark wizard, but it's because he's immortal that none of us can defeat him, so we travel back to the time he's not yet an immortal, and remove him at that time to remove the horrible deeds that he had done over the years. Mavis nodded her head in understanding. Nonetheless, it's still an extremely risky plan, because we won't be able to know what will happen, how the future will turn out when someone who has left such a mark in history like Zeref disappears from the timeline like that. This shit is making my head hurt so badly. Natsu muttered while holding his head. Don't try to think too much about it. It is complicated stuffs that not even smart people can understand quickly. Naruto commented with a small chuckle. Sila was beside him, as usual, but she was reading a book that she borrowed from her master and wasn't paying any attention to anyone but her master. Seriously? Natsu questioned in surprise before slamming his head down the table in front of him, making everyone around him chuckle humorously. They even tried to take Lucy and Yukino too. Gray spoke up that old man Darton was quite serious with his intention to stop the gate from opening. He had every reason to, you know. He understood the risks. Naruto pointed out. Still, what he did was something that he decided to do on his own. Arcadios is probably not the one behind the plan. It must be someone from the royal family, people who have a vast amount of resources and authorities, so I'm pretty sure Darton won't be able to do anything to stop it from happening. It was so fortunate that you were there with us, Naruto-sama. You saved us. Yukino said with a smile while holding her hands in front of her chest. And you too, Sila-sama. The black-haired demon said nothing and continued to read her book, but Naruto could tell she was quite pleased that Yukino addressed her so respectfully. Sila had always liked humans who knew their places in her own opinion, but how she treated them were not so different than the rest. Did I really? Naruto asked absent-mindedly. So, what are we going to do now? Mira asked curiously. I mean, changing history is very dangerous. Can we let them do something like that? Should stay out of the way for now. Technically, Minister Darton can't do anything to us from now on. Plus, without Lucy, Yukino and their golden keys, it's near impossible for them to open the gate, something that he wants. We still need to watch out for the ones behind the plan though, but with how Arcadios handled the situation, I'm sure they won't try anything harsh. Mavis answered with a smile. For the meantime, let's just concentrate on tomorrow matches, okay? With that, everyone returned to their usual activities around the bar. Naruto, meanwhile, spoke up to his student while waving his hand. Urza, come here. It's time for your next training. Yes, sensei. The redhead said excitedly and came to sit next to Naruto, but before he could start, Mavis appeared and touched his sleeve. Naruto, can I talk to you for a second? Sure, why not? Urza, you wait here and read this. Naruto nodded as he took out a small scroll from his pocket and handed it to Urza, before standing up and following Mavis out of the bar. No, you stay, Sila. He told the inferious demon when she tried to do the same and follow him, making her return to her seat. Leaving the bar, the two took a short walk before Mavis broke the silence after checking her surrounding to make sure that no one was around to eavesdrop their conversation. You know what is going to happen, don't you? About the gate. You saw it. Mavis said it's hard to read you, but it's written all over Sila's face. She had that superior look on her face while looking at the others when we mentioned the opening of the Eclipse gate. Her master knows something the others don't, so that makes her, who serves him, better than the rest. Naruto laughed loudly, but he didn't say anything afterward, so Mavis continued. Plus, I know you are not someone who will miss a phenomenon like that, both in the future and in the past. You were there when it opened to 400 years ago. That was not a question, but a statement. You figured that out fast. Naruto answered finally. Yes, I was. I see. Mavis nodded her head. Was it bad? You're not going to ask about Zeref? Was it bad, Naruto? Naruto said nothing as he folded his hands behind his head and looked up at the sky. Mavis also did the same, and widened her eyes in horror when she finally understood the hidden meaning behind his action. Tomorrow was soon going to be a long day, both for the Wizards of Fiore and for him. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.